I don't see Alex, guys, and as the vice chairman of the finance committee, I'd like to bring at least the finance committee part of this meeting to order. And then if the selectmen want to do the same, and then when Alex gets here, he can run it.
Rutland Select Board also 6:01.
Us
Or
as
in
well,
person.
6:01. Thank you. I think the first, little bit of business, and of course, as soon as I get going, here he comes, is the, town clerk reserve fund transfer request. Who wants to talk about that? Mr. Austin?
No, Anita,
Well, we'll see.
Anita.
Either or.
No, actually, this is for the town clerk's office.
Okay.
I filled out one, thank you for letting me jump into the beginning of this meeting, and I'll be quick. I filled out three reserve fund transfer request forms. As you know, we had two special elections last fall, which pretty much depleted our election budget. So for the March 5th primary that just ended, I'm short $33,762 in election wages and 50 cents in election wages. So the balance to pay all of our workers. And some of that is help that we needed during early vote time. And then the second and the third request are for additions to the election budget, both for wages anticipated for May and also for purchase services for May. We have to code the tabulator memory cards and purchase the ballots and the handicap machine, so that one's for $3,000. And we're anticipating $4,800 approximately for wages, both for the election day and also early voting expenses. Basically it.
Does anyone have any, on at least the finance committee, have any questions?
So it costs us about $7,800 every time we have an election-ish.
Yes.
Perfect.
You know,
It varies, I get it, but it's just so.
early voting is quickly adding up the funds.
Yeah, and that's a requirement for, it's an unfunded mandate by the state that it's even required for the municipal.
That we don't have to have in person for May, but we've opted in to have mail out early voting, so.
May I ask a question? Anita, if there's municipal stuff at the presidential election, is there an additional cost for ballot printing for that?
No, the state prints the ballots for, not the municipal election, but they print the ballots for any state election.
And if there's
special.
just anything that municipalities want to add that's included, we just have to get it to the state or the printer for.
If we were adding anything or having a second ballot.
Okay, thank you.
So it's your hope that these two amounts will get you through this fiscal year?
Yeah, I can't see that we would need more than that.
Okay.
If you look at what we originally budgeted for, we were pretty much on. So
Okay.
that, this gets us back. you know.
Okay.
Austin, we're budgeting FY25 for this correctly? Okay.
The reason why
Absent
is
any
because
special elections, of course.
she didn't know about the special election, so it was budgeted properly for what we knew.
Yep. Just making sure it was a counterpoint.
Make the motion to approve the reserve fund transfers as requested.
Any discussion, or further discussion, I guess, there was already discussion. Any comments? Okay, all those in favor of approving the first amount for $3762.50, I'm guessing we just did the first one, right?
I did all three.
You did all three?
I did all three.
Awesome. Approving all three reserve fund transfers. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right. FY25 budget discussion, starting with Bay Path. You guys are already at the table, ready to go. It's on you. Go for it.
Thank you for having us. I'm Kyle Brenner, the proud superintendent of Bay Path Regional Vocational Technical High School. I have our business manager, Irene Hume, here. I'd like to recognize our school committee rep, Anne Marie Pantos from Rutland, and Joe Becker sends his regrets. He had a family obligation tonight for not being here. So let me see if I can share. Let's see, go around so I can get a slideshow. Okay, chill it. Good. All right. Let's hope this works. Is it gonna work? I had a video. Try this connection.
There's no money to change the clock.
All right. It's gonna go.
Sleep?
Excellent. So I'm just going to show you a quick video of our school and highlight the brand-new website that our students in programming and web dev put together for us. And this is just Bay Path at a glance. Here's music. I'm not sure how to get that. It's not going? Why isn't that one sharing? Ah, I said you're watching it. You share. All right, here we go. Thank you. I'm not looking up there. It says, again, 60 seconds. Bear with
There we
me.
go.
Here, please.
There's a Zoom snafu, so they're fixing it, and so it might be a minute.
Okay,
Sorry.
all right. Well, I would encourage you to check out our new website. Our students in programming web dev put it all together under the tutelage of their instructors. It's just one of the cost savings that I can highlight at our school. Going out to bid, this would have been over $100,000 to have this put together for us. Our students put it together and maintain it, and it is representative of a website that should be in place for a technical school on that. So I can't even show you the interactiveness on that.
Why don't you bring it back to the beginning and just turn it around?
Recording in progress.
So you might have to,
Recording stopped.
I can show you all.
There you go.
You have to tell me when it's
you
done.
might need to join a different Zoom.
Oh, okay.
So, do you have Zoom open?
I do. Almost at the end of this. Go.
Let us finish watching this
Yeah.
first.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was playing.
This is the new number.
Join that one?
Yep.
You got it. I think that's it. That's it. I wanted to keep it.
Now you're all set.
All set? Great. All right, sorry. There's a will, there's a way, right?
Yep.
All right, so let me close this.
When it works.
There's this. Escape. Oh, yeah. Kick me off 3 minutes. Come on, Zoom.
like you're good.
Speed of light. All right. Great. All right. Let's get those. So our funding sources. Chapter 70 and Chapter 71 estimates are based on the governor's budget that was submitted January 25th, 2024. Our estimated Chapter 70 funding for FY '25 is $14,453,612. And our estimated Chapter 71 funding for FY '25 is $1,308,294. These are preliminary estimates subject to change as the House and Senate deliberate on the budget. So what is the impact on Bay Path? This slide shows our FY '25 as well as our projected FY '25 as well as our current FY '24. So you can see the Chapter 70 is an increase of $234,332. Increase in minimum contribution to our 10 towns is $530,546, and overall required net school spending increase of $764,878. FY '25 total budget assessments is $29,173,197. Our member town assessments are at the minimum. Budget includes debt service assessment of $1,552,023. Our operational budget does not require funds above the minimum contributions by our member communities. Our member assessment total is $12,932,626. Although the assessments are at a minimum, it's important to note that the required minimum contributions that each town may contribute have increased collectively by $530,546. Our member town's transportation assessment has been reduced by $600,000, reflecting the use of our regional transportation reimbursement fund. So pushing that back. Our financial highlights, our total Chapter 70 revenue is $14,453,612. Our school choice assessment is $296,335. And our Chapter 71 busing aid is $1,308,294. We will be using $75,000 from our excess and deficiency to continue to fund down our OPEB liability, and we'll use another $100,000 from E&D to fund our net school spending obligation next year. This is our budget summary. So again, our operational budget is shown at the top, our Chapter 70. Money is there is $14.4 million. Our school assessment, $296,335. Our assessment, our minimum contribution is $11,225,779. No assessment above the minimum. E&D, we show the $75,000 for our OPEB transfer and $100,000 for our net school spending, bringing our operational total to $25,558,056. Our transportation budget, total transportation projected for next year did go up. We went out to bid this year. We had one bidder submit for a student. We selected that bid. It's the first time in 5 years our transportation has gone up. We had a 3-year agreement with 2 one-year extensions. We were able to exercise those extensions at no increased cost, but
They did go up, but it was very small. It was more like a, 2 to 3% increase. This one was 15.
so that's gone up. So our total is $2,063,118. Our Chapter 71 aid is $1,308,294. We push in the $600,000 from transportation reimbursement, and we reduce the assessment to our 10 towns down to $154,824 on that. Our debt service, again, you can see the principal is higher than the interest, second year in a row, so that trend will continue. And the total is $1,552,023 on that. No buy-in assessment for capital, and the sewer betterment fee is now zero. So our FY 2025 budget for assessment is $29,173,197. School choice we add back in, that's $296,335. So our total operating budget with school choice is $29,469,532. So the budget for FY '25, again, removing the school choice, is $29,173,197. Our highlights, some of our highlights. There's a lot more that we support with our budget, but these are some new adds. We're adding an assistant principal position. It's the first assistant principal position for our school, which has 1,243 students projected for next year, and we will be converting dean of students to a full assistant principal position as well. We're going to add a vocational aide. We're going to add an intern for our IT department. That intern will be a co-op position from our ISSN department on that, so it'll give a good opportunity for that, as well as giving us some relief with all the IT demands, which you'll see why, because next year we'll be starting a one-to-one initiative for all our students. Every student coming in will have a device that's issued to them, and this will fund the associated software on that. So we're looking to purchase Google Chromebooks. We've done an assessment of our technology. All 10 of our towns that we pull from use Google Classroom and Google Platform on that. So this will be in keeping. Our students will come in, they'll know the platform. Currently, we're Microsoft. We also did a cost-benefit analysis on it. A Google book that we're looking to purchase is about $250 per device, and a similar Microsoft device is over $700 on that. The operating platform is going to also give us a reduced cost of annually $6,000 on that as well. This budget includes wage increases in accordance with our collective bargaining agreements and increased costs for transportation, which we talked about. And it's the first time in many years that our health care has gone up. It's a pretty good increase, but again, we've enjoyed relatively minimal movement on that for a number of years through the Hampshire group on that. We're going to continue to use our SOA funds. SOA is Student Opportunity Act funds. It was a separate funding opportunity. It's baked into the foundation budget, but the state tracks that. We put a new Student Opportunity Act will go into place April 1st. We're working on that. The current one sunsets. We'll submit that Student Opportunity Act plan, and then the state will have a metric for all school districts on how we are in meeting those, and that the funds allocated are being used for what they are directed to be used for, which is to focus on our most vulnerable populations, so students with disabilities, low-income students, L students, and so forth, students with social and emotional issues as well. We did include in our budget professional grounds contract for our fields. Our fields are over 50 years old. They're the original fields. They weren't updated when we renovated the school on that, so they're showing their wear and tear. It's natural turf fields. We do the best we can on them, but currently we updated our athletic facilities master plan. There was a plan done in 2017. Those costs are obviously useless for us. So they came in, redid it, they looked at our fields. They're currently experiencing over 4 times the required daily use on those fields. So they have no time to regenerate a natural turf on that. So we've done it the past 2 years, hired someone to come in. We shut the fields off in the summertime, give them some rest, and they do the best to bring those back. The master plan has 2 options. A synthetic turf game field will alleviate a lot of usage and can take a lot more usage on that field. If we were to proceed and look into just doing a synthetic turf on our game field, that's about a $2.9 million capital improvement to do the full plan and meet the actual needs of all our athletic programs, an additional multipurpose field and a baseball field on that. It's upwards of $8 million on that. So there was an initiative that was in place back in 2018 to utilize about 23 acres of our property and put in a solar field and fund that, and it would net out to zero cost to our 10 towns on that. There are delays in that, in permitting and so forth. So looking at that now and going back out to that best bidder on that, it's not cost efficient to do it now. So the incentives for solar fields have decreased by 40%. So the incentives with that time frame have gone down 40%. And we are a national grid, so there's no more net metering. So it wouldn't be prudent for us to proceed with that. We wouldn't get the bang for the buck on that. So we are looking at alternative funding sources. That's why you won't see it in our capital program for the funding now. But we are looking at different ways that we can do it and what's the best course of action on that, of which I'll bring up that will be part of our strategic plan, 3-year strategic plan, which we just kicked off last week. So we sent it out. It's on all our social media, on our new website. If you're interested in a stakeholder and participating with that, we're looking forward to that. But more to come on our fields. We'll include textbooks for our vocational programming and some shop equipment. Highlights are a CNC miller control, a surface grinder, a CNC router, and a dust collector for our cabinet making shop. A rotating bake oven to bring cookies next year.
Don't forget that.
And a freezer for our culinary department. Virtual welding machine for our metal fab. So this is a cost saving as well as the SimMan on that. So the new virtual welders with the advancement in technology, the original ones would teach gross motor skills. These you can actually develop fine motor skills on that. So before the students pick up the actual, gas welders and welding rods and put themselves in those potential, knock on wood, safety situations, they can work on the virtual welders. So we're not going through acetylene, we're not going through our welding gases, and we're not going through the welding rods and so forth on that. So we're looking forward to that.
Quick question. Do you have CNC machines now?
We do, yeah. Our advanced manufacturing as the 5-axis and the Haas machines on that. But the CNC is for our cabinet making, so they can do the millwork.
Okay.
And we're updating that as well, so. And the SimMan is a virtual mannequin for our allied health that they can simulate different heart attacks, different issues, and the students can respond to that, and they're not working on real people, which would be awful if they had a heart attack. Which brings us to our freshman seat allocation. So our 10 towns in agreement with our district agreements, the seat allocation is based off capital population of our 10 sending towns. The total is 17,747. Rutland comprises 10.02% of that. So for our 325 available seats to incoming freshmen, that equates to 31 seats for the town of Rutland. We've been asked, and I do have it, this year we received over 50 applications from Rutland. And so there are some students on a wait list on that. That's pretty typical of all 10 of our towns. With 325 seats, we received just under 700 applications for admissions on that, which is indicative for vocational schools across the state. There's, depending on what numbers you're using, there's anywhere from 6,000 to 11,000 students on wait lists to get into vocational education. We are at capacity, but we are expanding or exploring ways that we can bring students in to receive the training in the vocational world. So stay tuned on that. Foundation enrollment is the number of students across all grades from each town that are in our schools. So projected next year will be 1,243 students. Rutland will have a total of 69 students across the 4 grades. That's an increase of 12 students over this current year on that. And total foundation enrollment, Rutland comprises 21.05% of our total population. And this just shows Rutland's foundation enrollment of all school-aged children. So the Wachusett district comprises 1,645 students, Bay Path 69 students, for a total of 1,714 students for the town of Rutland. So the required local contribution for FY '25, this slide shows the current year required contribution of $9,214,982. A municipal revenue growth factor, which is important, and that's set by the state, that's 5.48%. So the FY '25 preliminary required local contribution is $9,719,963. Excess shortfall is $92,150 for a total required contribution for FY '25 of $9,812,113. And down below, we show the different makeup of that for the town of Rutland as a total, with Wachusett as well as Bay Path, and what our percentage is. Bay Path makes up 6.38% of that, or $1,425,485. The FY '25 total required contribution, again, is $9,812,113. And this amount spread across all the districts for the town of Rutland makes up the foundation budget apportionment. And again, we show that Bay Path is 6.38% of that, or an increase of 0.99% over last year. And the required contribution for Bay Path is $626,463, an increase over last year of $129,898. School attending children report. So this is total number of school attending children. Our towns, like this slide, we're going to have to cut off 2013 because we're running out of space, but it tracks the increase or decrease across all 11 of those years. Rutland has an overall increase of 20, where you can see bucks the trend of our other sending towns who have seen sharp decreases in the number of school-aged children in that. District-wide, there's been a reduction over the last 11 years of 1,700 school-aged children.
I'm just trying to put the numbers together. You have a wait list, and yet we have a reduction in the numbers.
So we don't. Our colleagues experience reductions.
Okay.
We don't. So we'll continuously fill our 325 seats over the years. Our colleagues won't, unfortunately. So less school-aged children equates to less funding and cuts, unfortunately. We do benefit with the wait list that we do have 325 students that will come in our door every year.
Okay.
More if we can find the place for them.
How long can they be waitlisted for? The whole year?
Oh, what a great question.
So we take, yes, we'll pull off the wait, we just pulled off the wait list this year. So all our students were placed in their trades. We did have openings in certain trades. So we use that, the applications and the wait list, and we go back. So say it's advanced manufacturing, we'll go back and see who picked advanced manufacturing, number one, or within the top three, and we'll contact those students and say, we do have an opening if you want to come in for advanced manufacturing only. So they will come in for those particular trades. So we're looking, actually, it's this Saturday. We have kind of I'll call it a mini explore for those students. So we're looking at about 15 students to come in, and they'll do a shop project in that and see if it's a good fit for them, and then make a decision whether they want to come in. So we will fill our seats for next year off of that, which is unique. The prior district that I was in, after the start of the school year, the wait list was done. Our seats were full on that. But we will pull them in at the end of this year and fill those seats.
So the disciplines are filled before this exercise that's coming up?
Mm-hmm.
And where they're not filled, that's where you'll bring in the waitlisted kids?
Yes. Yep. So we want to take advantage and try to fill all the seats. So if we have openings in advanced manufacturing, ISSN, electronics, I think business, so we'll fill those. We'll go to the application.
Know ahead of time whether or not the kids that applied are interested in the opening part? Are you just calling them saying,
Nope, so on the application, it's a great question. On the application, they rank all 23 of our programs in the order of their preference, 1 through 23. The students that get accepted will explore their top 8 programs. So they'll go through 1 week, actually 2 weeks, 1 week of Related and 1 week of SHOP.
Right.
So they'll learn all the bookwork and the safety and career potential opportunities, and the wages associated with those and the different degrees or levels of certifications you'll need for that. And then they'll actually do some hands-on welding or carpentry or auto finishing or auto mechanic. They get a grade in each one of those 8 at the end of that, right about the Christmas break, the holiday break. They'll rank their top 6, and then based on how they did and their input, we place the students on that for the start of the third quarter. Some students, we get, for the top 3 choice placements, we're about a 90%. We're a high 80% for first choice placements. Some students will be like, I'm not here. What we always say is you apply to the school, you don't apply to the program. Some students won't like the placement and will choose to go back to their sending district, and that creates openings that we can then fill off of that. But with them, that in that situation, we'll go back and we won't take, the next person on the list, because we're looking at who's interested in those programs, because they are now applying for the program. Because they'll be in that for the next 3 years.
So the students that are in first get to experience a variety.
Full explore.
And make a choice from those. The students that are waitlisted, unless they are really specific about what they want in the beginning, unless what would be their number 1 choice, is that what you're saying?
In the top 3, we'll call and say, because those students who pick at number 1 might be like, yeah, thanks, but I'm well settled in my school and I'm going to stay here. Thanks for the opportunity. So we'll go on to the next one.
Okay.
And we'll go down the list from that.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Before that, if we have students that will leave during the Explore, we can accept in, and then they'll, jump in during whatever section of the Explore we're in.
Okay.
Yep. Excellent. Good questions. So our statement of assessments for all 10 of our districts is shown here. You can see the minimum contribution, foundation enrollment, the ratios, transportation assessments. For all 10 of our towns, that equates up to our total assessments. Rutland is highlighted here, so again, minimum contribution is $626,463 for Bay Path. Foundation enrollment of 69 students equating to 5.55%. We use that ratio, multiply it by the total transportation assessment. So Rutland's share is $8,594. And then the capital population, Rutland is comprised of 10.02%. We multiply that by the debt service of 1.5 million, so that's $155,578 for a grand total of $790,636. And our next slide just shows that alone, and you can see the increase for each category. Minimum contribution has an increase of $129,898. Transportation has gone up $1,945. Debt service has gone up $8,350 for a grand total of an increase of $140,193.
I might have missed it someplace, but what's the Rutland percentage of population in Bay Path?
That was
Close to 20, isn't it?
total population?
10.
10. That would be our foundation enrollment, so 21%.
10 freshmen and
So-
12.
Yeah,
21, yes.
That's the percentage of the increase. That's not the
percent change.
total.
Ah, yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah.
10.02.
10.02 for the freshman
Yeah.
seat allocation.
12 overall, wasn't it?
Overall, you're talking 69 over 1,200, it's gonna be a pretty small number.
5.55, total enrollment, 5.55% of our total foundation enrollment.
Okay.
Yeah, 69 of 1,243.
Okay. Thank you.
What's your E&D total?
You said what?
E&D total.
The current balance in E&D is $1.9 million. Yes.
you have a minimum, not minimum, but what's your maximum funding for that, percentage-wise? Do you have one?
We do. If it comes through as expected, I'm actually waiting. We ran into a couple of glitches, including the fact that the state was late with their transportation reimbursement this year. It didn't come in till July, so they made me do a receivable for it. So that got real interesting. Plus, it came in substantially higher, because after we had gone through the budget process, the state decided that instead of only reimbursing somewhere between 50 and 65%, they were going to reimburse it close to 80, actually. So that really threw everyone for a loop. So
A good loop.
the 5% of this year's budget would put us at $1,400,000. So it looks like we've got an excess of probably about $500,000. So it will be brought to the school committee, and they will decide how that will be, quote, returned to the towns. And there's a couple of options for that, and again, that will be school committee's decision to make how we do that.
We'll take cash.
But the school committee has voted to use $100,000 of E&D to balance the budget.
Correct. I'm not
Want to make sure
so
that's
much to
well.
balance it as when you spend less than your net school spending, which is part of what will ultimately contribute, to your E&D, along with things like interest on all your accounts, and a number of other things, certain monies that we get in, like from Medicaid, that all piles in there. They tell you have to make it up in the following year. So that's for a previous year when we didn't quite hit that net school spending number.
So if I understand, your policy is that you will not fund that E&D more than 5% of your budget. That's your limit for funding that.
We don't have a definite limit, because it's so all over the place. So 2 years ago, we met our net school spending, no problem, life was good. But then, last year, not so much. So again, and I can go back, there's other years, there was like back in, I want to say 2015, 2016, they were off by about 500,000. And then, of course, during the pandemic,
No, but there's a cap on E&D.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
There's a cap on
just,
E&D by the
yeah.
state.
So
That the state caps it at 5%.
that's what I was going to
Right.
say.
The
So you
state
follow
caps
that
it.
guideline?
We
Yes.
have to,
Okay.
right? We have no choice.
Okay.
What percentage of, what percentage of your students go on to college?
It's about, don't hold me to the exact, but it's about 50-50.
Okay.
40-something% will go on to higher education. we call
Higher
it.
education,
So that's
let's
a
say that.
2-year technical school, community college, or a 4-year school on that. And the rest will go into, about, the same percentage will go directly into the world of work. And we have about anywhere from a 3 to 5% will go into the military. So we have to track, that's what we consider, the state and the feds consider positive placement. So at the time of graduation, we have to track where our students are going. And those are the 3 top qualifying: higher education, into the field of work, or they're joining one of our military branches on that. And then we do a 1-year follow-up. And we meet our targets every year for that. We have to, otherwise our Perkins funding is in jeopardy on that. So,
Thank you.
I'm curious. Do you think they're joining the military because they want more advanced training from what they've already learned from you, and they can get that in the military, or they're just going into the military?
I think it's a mix. It's a mix. We do have those who just want to serve, which is always makes us so proud. But they can, with their skills, on the ASVAB, they have a choice on where they want to go on that. So, and all our students do well. So, and I got to put it in the slide. We have AP courses. So our students are earning college credits, and they're earning, we'll be back to the dual enrollment credits soon on that, but they're performing academically, they're performing vocationally, and I'm proud to say they're performing athletically. So tonight, our banquet for our football team, winning the state vocational large school, is tonight. That's the 2nd year in a row. Girls basketball won the state large school vocational, so that banquet will be coming up. And yeah, so across all the fields, they're doing a wonderful job on that. And it's important to note that with the state too, is we have to pick one, and, one of those. So if they're working and going to college, most will check college, but a lot of them are working to pay for college. And a lot of them get hired out of co-op, and the company will pay for them to go to college in the evening, or make different arrangements for that. So, they're truly, a step up when they go on and leave us.
On the back page, it says the general fund
Okay, yeah.
has gone up 3.9%,
Yeah. The total budget, that's the entire budget.
has gone up 3.9%.
Yes.
And Rutland has done what in comparison to that?
Your assessment has gone up, your total assessment has gone up 21.55%. And if you look at page 9, where that's broken out of the slides. Let me see where it's right there.
We didn't get the slides.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
So if you could send them tomorrow to
Okay.
Austin and Tamika, then they can get them out.
Okay. I thought you had. I apologize if you did not, but
No, that's your page, right? It's page 18.
no, that helps, doesn't it? Slide 18. Sorry about that.
Right here. This
Okay.
one.
Oh, that's right, 'cause you put the extra one in.
21.55.
Yep, 21.55%. If you look, you'll notice that the majority of that is from your minimum contribution increase. Now, that's due in part to the fact that you have quite a few more students this year, but it's also due to that, over 5% municipal revenue growth factor that they used in determining, what your minimum contribution would be, plus the 196,000, whatever it was that they are charging you for the excess to get you to where they want you to be, for the amount that you're contributing, your minimum required contribution.
So that's why I said the municipal revenue growth factor is important. That's,
That's the 5-point-something percent.
5.48%, and then the excess 92,000 on that. So that's set by the state.
So here's my next question. Municipality can't go up more than 2.5%. What is the biggest thing that prevents you from keeping that 3.9 at 2.5 or lower?
State.
You want me to answer
We're
that?
at net school spending, so we're at what the state allows for our school to operate. So we're at the minimum local required contribution.
So it's the state.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, the funding formula is what it is. So we're not looking to go up, and historically, we've always been at net school spending or below. And we return, that money to our towns when that money's there. Anything that's over too, it's being returned, that's where the creation of the transportation reimbursement. So, we've reduced that by 600,000 to our 10 towns on that.
That 5.4% from the state is only Rutland, right?
Yes.
It's different for every municipality.
Did you have a slide that laid it out for each municipality?
I don't, but I've got it on my,
Are we in the ballpark? Are we,
I've seen 3s
And 7s.
and 7s, escape this, I can go.
I know there's a couple of towns that are around 3. There's one town that's at 7, and those are just the ones coming off the top of my head.
Yeah, so we have it on each one of our individual town ones, but they're 3s and 7s, and some are lower, and some are higher.
or we're about middle of the pack?
Yes.
Yeah, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, it has to do with, the bond ratings of the towns, tax assessments and all
Yeah,
that.
your property valuations
Yeah.
and your income.
Yeah.
They look at the household income.
If you're doing well, unfortunately, that's higher.
So the key word of that whole couple minutes was the state.
Yeah. Yeah.
The
I'm wondering
state.
how Jim's going to answer that question, but anyway, we'll
The state. He's gonna say the same words. The state.
just double check.
Thanks for bringing the cookies.
So the, however many millions of dollars that you might be looking at for those fields, are you looking at that to come to the towns in how many years?
I'm not sure, so we're just looking at, again, that's part of our strategic plan. It's one of the 6 core areas that we're looking at on that.
Just so you know, your predecessors let us know many years in advance when they were going to do stuff. So if you give us a little bit, then that way we're not, it helps.
That's why we're
You don't need the
introducing
sim
it.
machine?
So unbeknownst to me, there was that study that was done when it was brought that we need to do something about the fields, and I found that the study was done in 2017, and I'm like, oh, let me look at that. And that was never floated by. I think it was floated by when the renovation was there, and part of it was to reduce the costs at the time. We weren't going to do the fields at the same time, which, I inherited. So we updated that, and we tried to resurrect the solar field, and we put it back out to see if the same return was available, because there are a lot of pieces to it. Then we would have to go before the town of Charlton town meeting to change the bylaws to allow us to put a solar field that large in place. So we did our homework before we did that, because if we went through that and they granted it, and then we said, oh, hey, thanks, but no thanks.
Thanks,
It's not
but
going
no.
to do it. So we're looking at that, and that's part of our strategic plan to see how we do it. And the alternative funding sources, like, is there a donor? Is there, what can we do on that? Can we use some of our, E&D, and what's the best approach for it? Do we start a capital reimbursement campaign on that? So, yeah.
I don't know if you have the capacity to look at some of the federal funding that's available. I know the infrastructure and funding there may be avenues for funding, especially education-based in solar and renewable energies. So there's a lot of hoops and things to jump through, but there's a lot of money available. So I don't know all the specifics.
We are open to ideas,
Yeah.
including trying to find a corporate sponsor.
But
That's what we vote for.
Absolutely.
But this is part of the get it out there, so it's not a shock.
But I
Don't come next year, please.
Just as an aside, I know the state is pushing the renewable energy kind of education piece, especially with Cape Wind and everything, so kind of providing opportunities for the workforce, the Massachusetts workforce, to learn the technology and learn how to do it. And there's a lot of money available. I don't know the strings that are attached to it.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. We'll definitely look into it on that. But that's part of the reason I believe Charlton changed, because they have their fair share of large solar fields. So as the state pushes it, they're looking for their colleagues to, step up to the plate and put
I
some
didn't know if you
solar
could
fields
swing
in.
it maybe as an education piece, that you're training students
We
to
tried that, yep.
learn the technology.
Absolutely. Yep. So, yeah, a la the Treasure Valley site. That was the educational component of it.
Yeah, we're in on
And we're in
that one.
And
Yeah.
we do experience a significant saving on our electricity for
Yep,
that
we
as well,
do.
too. So, excellent.
Question. I noticed on your slides, it seemed like your debt was pretty consistent from year to year, not being a lot, pretty small percentage. As you move forward and you're looking at these projects, are you looking to bring on more debt that would affect that budget?
The only thing that would be on the table right now is the fields.
Okay.
That would add to that debt. So I think there's 20 years left on that debt.
Yeah, it was 30 years when they took it out in 2015. So 2044, as I recall, is the year that it retires.
Okay.
So that debt will be there.
Because debt can surprise you sometimes when you're looking at budgets of when it fluctuates from year to year. That's why I asked that.
Yeah. So the debt for just that, for the major renovation that was done, okay, in and of itself is due to retire in 2044, and that amount should not change. It should be roughly the same every year from now till then. Like you said, if we then were to do something else that had to be part of debt, that total number for debt could change. But we don't currently have any plans to, to be adding to that number.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So if I brought sandwiches and cookies, could we add the fields next year? Just kidding.
You're learning.
No. I heard
Depends what kind of sandwiches I know. Don't say no so quick.
We'll talk.
Don't say no so quick, miss.
I heard culinary had some good cakes the other week.
Yeah.
Oh, they have so many amazing things. If you haven't been out to the restaurant, absolutely come out. They do a wonderful job, and they have a bake shop right there as well, too, so.
Yeah, you're missing out. And if you love prime rib, you want to come on a Thursday
yeah,
or
those-
Friday. Those
so-
are the days they serve prime rib.
Even though Rutland's located out here, I do have the number of residents, about 15. So 3 residents have utilized to date this year our automotive collision department, 7 our automotive technology department, 1 had utilized our carpentry department, and 4 have taken advantage of our graphic communications. And we don't track them, we don't ask where they're coming from, but our restaurant is usually standing room waiting to get in there, so. We have a lot of community services. And again, that's where, check out our website. It has all our community services there on it. So, thank you.
What time does that open, the restaurant?
11:30. 11:30. Yep.
You're gonna get a bus?
And you can see the menu's right online, so yeah. If you're coming with a crowd, I'd suggest call ahead and make a reservation.
We can call you or I.
That's right.
Depends.
You got a better chance of catching our read. So, but thank you so much.
I'm closer, so I can walk faster.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you and good night.
Good to see you. Thank you.
All right. Wachusett, you guys are up. Take your time getting set up and.
Thank you very much.
A lot of stuff is am I hearing you say that for the schools, what they can increase their budget, they have a minimum, or maximum, I should say, because that's what they're at.
Yeah, if you could. Thank you.
At minimum.
So we have,
Wachusett isn't. Wachusett does minimum plus.
we have, the town has to supply a minimum contribution
Yep.
to our local schools. They only use the minimum that's required.
They don't ask for any.
But their minimum is 3.9.
The state says that the vocational schools get more, allocations per student, more dollar allocations. It's a big massive formula, so the state doesn't say, the state says minimum wage is each town has based on some, and whether it's a vocational school has one formula.
Forgot about Tommy, I'm sorry. Oh, my God.
Oh, my goodness. It's not necessarily ever what the maximum is, is how much money they have.
I had them. And if I didn't have them here today, then I had them, because I did look at them. So they're in my other bag.
They have, it's
Was I- oh, yeah, I had it the other night, and I was
They
looking
have
at it.
1.9 now, so they'll have to figure out what to do with that, right? And then the other thing is the $100,000 that's from, in their cash thing is, they didn't spend their minimum required per student over the previous year, probably because they got reimbursement from Medicare, Medicaid, some sort of reimbursement, so then by default, that has to go towards students. And so it automatically gets pumped into, is how it's out.
It looks like it's gonna go back to the towns.
It comes off the total budget, I think.
So what
Yeah, hey, guys, Sherry made us cookies, we gotta eat the cookies. Sherry was nice enough to make cookies.
You can take a break and have a cookie.
I mean, in the grand scheme of things,
Nourish yourself.
we're getting something from Wachusett, take it now.
Yeah, we're getting something.
Basically, the state is saying that.
You know that's how I feel, so.
Why would she?
We graduated from that.
I open the napkins to make my wife proud.
She doesn't sound like a proud student when she says it like that.
Would you like one? They're homemade, you gotta
Maybe
have
when
one.
you,
They're homemade, you gotta.
Those look
Oh,
delicious.
goodness gracious.
thank you.
Average income and.
I didn't go to culinary school, I went to business school.
Thank you.
We have night school down here,
Specific, because it was really eye-opening.
Austin, I made sure that was enough for you too. I heard you. I heard you at that meeting.
Every year. Oh, pieces.
No, I'm good, thank you.
Would you like a cookie? You sure? Yeah. Here's a napkin.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
You sure?
Yeah, thank you.
Alex?
Absolutely. All right, I think we're ready.
Jen? No, I'm not ready yet. Give me a minute.
It's all prep work.
You can't walk around and listen?
No, because I got stuff I gotta ask.
Well, you're not gonna ask while you're passing the cookies around, let it go.
That's why she says we can't start.
Just wait 2 minutes.
Sweet baby.
Well, before I leave, I'm having
You
one.
sure?
I am, because I'll end up needing
You
one.
sure?
Grab it real quick. Thank you, though.
You gotta have one, because she made it special. I'm sure you have enough. Have two, you're small. Paul?
Yep.
Were you a waitress at one point in your life?
Never, ever.
You're doing a great job. Do you host a lot of parties at your house?
Yeah, great. I'm slightly offended that you didn't say from yet.
That's a good
You
job.
got that, okay.
And that's the reason why I was never a waitress.
I made you nervous.
Paul just got 2 more cookies.
Just dump them. I'm Paul.
Yeah.
I told you I never was a waitress, there's a reason.
Okay.
Now you can start.
You did a great job, you can do it next year.
We appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about the Wachusett schools. You have a presentation, or we had sent you a presentation. I'll be honest with you, this presentation's a little bit different because we try to adapt it a little bit to the towns and some information we know that they might be interested in. I just want to thank, we have some school committee support here. We have Janet Brennan, who's our finance chair, our vice chair, Sherry Haber, who was our former chair, Mona Varden, who's a member of the committee for both years I've been here, and Brett Piedmore. So I want to thank them all for being here and for their support. I really feel fortunate from the membership. They're all parts of all our subcommittees and really do a nice part, both representing Rutland and advocating for our students. And then got a local celebrity here with Mr. C from Central Tree. Thank him for coming along as well.
Spaceman.
Yeah, that's right, with the lasso.
Awesome. I'm gonna say they call that right out in front of you. That was cool.
Thank you, Darren.
It was. It made me laugh. So I'm going to talk to you today, and if you have questions or however you want to run it, if you want to ask questions as they come up, I'm happy to answer them or wait until the end. My hope today, honestly, is to be as transparent as possible and show you why we are where we are. You know, it's not an easy conversation, I'll be honest with you. I think this is the 6th presentation we've had really in about a 2.5 week period. And I say the same thing at the beginning. It's not a budget we like at all, to be honest with you. It's a big assessment increase for all the towns, and we're not getting a whole lot for it. And I just want to acknowledge that up front. I don't think we feel good about that, but I'm hoping I'd be able to show you why we have those increases and what we're trying to protect in terms of essential services in our schools. I think the other thing I'd share with you is, like, I don't think school committee loves the budget either. And we don't as a district, because we really have a lot of work to do in Wachusett. And there are a lot of improvements that we want to make, but this was certainly a year where we knew we couldn't advocate for any of those things. Like I said before, my goal is to share the decision-making process we did in developing this budget, and then also show you the data. Why, I mean, one of the things we really have made a lot of ground with in the district is our financial principles and properties and practices that we go through. I mean, we really feel like we can show you in any assessment why it's gone up, if it's gone up, and, you know, have the support to document that. And so I was just going to give you a brief district financial recap, as well as looking at FY23, where we ended up, where we are right now in FY24, our FY25 development process, what our FY25 draft budget is, talk a little bit about capital requests, and then really give you some considerations and next steps that we're hoping to take in the district. So we made a joke earlier, and Michelle, if I get any good press or any good feelings, it's usually because of Michelle. And I mean that because she really has worked a miracle. I say this to every town I go to. I say it in front of school committee. It was embarrassing to come by and speak to our towns last year. It was embarrassing because we were in such a financial mess. And we hadn't completed our FY21 audit. We hadn't completed our FY22 audit. We had not completed our FY22 end-of-the-year report. We had not completed our FY22 excess and deficiency certification. We had cash reconciliations that went back to July of 2021. We had journal entries that weren't current all the way back to July of 21. And they're all been fixed. And so all of that work has been done, and it's a credit to Michelle and the business department. They've worked incredibly hard, but, really, that's 3 fiscal years of work that they completed in really about a little bit more than a year. In terms of this year, we submitted our end-of-the-year report. It's completed, it's done. We do have our excess and deficiency for this year, and that's already been completed. And we have an FY23 audit in progress, and we estimate that that's going to be done by the end of April. And so really just a huge credit to Michelle, and I think that's one of the things we do feel good about when we come to the towns now, is we really feel like our financial ship is in order. We do have one adjustment that we've had to make through this budget process and show you that we've kind of finally caught up, I think, in terms of line items and assessments that are properly developed based on what the real expenses are and documented by that, where it really wasn't a practice that the district had done in the past. So I want to look at and share with you where we ended in FY23. And so, as I shared on that other slide, we had not closed out FY22. And because of that, and we did not close out FY22 until May of last year. And effectively what that meant is FY23 records and financial record keeping wasn't where it needed to be because FY22 hadn't been completely closed out in the system. And, I've shared this publicly with school committee, and I think I shared it with this group last year. We were at a point where we hadn't done our end-of-year reporting or filed our excess and deficiency, and we were meeting with the Department of Education and the Department of Revenue on a weekly basis. And we were doing that February until it finally ended in April.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was fun, wasn't it?
Yeah, welcome. Welcome to your new jobs. But, and it was serious. And, they had to let us know, look, we've got real concerns here with what's going on. Our Chapter 70 funding could have been at risk. And so, we really were in a position where we had to pull out of a pretty serious nosedive, and we're able to do it, but that was a scary process. But because we didn't finish it in FY22 and until May, that's when we really had a true grip on what our expenditures were in the budget for FY24, and for FY23, excuse me. And I had shared this when I came last year. We had worries about that budget because FY22 started with the district needing to make $1.65 million in transfers to balance the FY22 budget. That was the first school committee meeting I was a part of in July of '22. And we talked about that at the next meeting because, I think we were all concerned, and in school committee as well, in terms of watching where our finances were and how the budget was actually created. So when we were able to look at FY23 live, we had 4 assessments in particular that were of concern. Our benefits and insurance line was off by about $851,000. Our special ed out-of-district tuitions was off by a little more than $1 million. Our special ed out-of-district transportation was under appropriated by about $1,100,000, and our operations and maintenance line were off by about $580,000. These are expenses, and I think we could show you this in this year's budget, that you really should know. You should know what your benefits and insurance are going to go up by, and you should be able to calculate that. You should have a system where out-of-district tuitions and transportation can vary a little bit because you never know who's going to maybe move in and be eligible, but not by these amounts. And operations and maintenance has been a struggle in the district. I think I'd freely admit that the district needed to take a better approach to maintaining the buildings, but we also have a lot of aging buildings, and we have a lot of systems that are breaking down. Some of our schools, beautiful schools, Glenwood and Central Tree, Naquag's a little bit older, and, they all have systems that are coming of age and need a little help. And so, that's a line that we continue to struggle with. Michelle was great in the process, and one of the things I'll say, so while Michelle was digging out of all those financial reports that we had to complete, she was also trying to build a budget, and that was about She had been with us 2-3 months? Yeah, okay. And so, thankfully, because of the approach she took, she was able to address benefits and insurance. She made an adjustment to transportation, and she made an adjustment in our operations and maintenance line. She did not know about the out-of-district tuitions. And so this year, that's one line that's not properly funded again. And I know we're going to be properly funded this year, but that's one of the lines when we share with you that we've made an adjustment in, it hasn't been funded properly, probably for about 5 years. And so now that we know that and we're able to budget for it, that is one of the, you'll see that that's the biggest adjustment we've made in the budget. And like it's taken us 1.5 years to get there, to have a financially sound approach to the budget. And I think we both wish we knew that before last year. But the budget had already been created when FY22 was closed, and we were kind of stuck, to be honest with you. And so that one deficiency, I would say, in special ed out-of-district tuitions, that has impacted us this budget year.
But if that wasn't budgeted correctly in past years, how was it getting paid for? You know?
How, yeah, so, and it's a great question. I'm gonna right now, so you're perfect in that you're anticipating what we did. So, to balance it, last year, we did a couple things. And so one of the things we did is we went to school committee and asked for permission to use excess and deficiency and amended the budget. We did that for about $950,000. We've had to use excess and deficiency to a great amount for both FY22 and FY23. And so in FY23, it was a revenue put in to build the budget of $850,000, and then we had to use that additional $950,000 at the end of the year because we had that overage in special ed out-of-district tuitions. We also always use our revolving funds like circuit breaker, and we also have grants that we use to minimize those costs, but we hit those pretty hard as well, but had to make sure we're trying to at least have some minimum balances in those funds, and I'm going to share where we are with excess and deficiency, but we're around 1% for excess and deficiency right now.
So just to clarify, what I asked was in prior is before you guys got here, do you know how that was paid if it wasn't funded correctly?
So
obviously you might not know.
Yeah, so in what I only know about is FY22. And so in FY22, they also allocated, I think it was 950, we have it on a slide. They also allocated 950 in excess and deficiency. They did that front-loaded, and so they used it as a revenue source. But then I said, when I first came in, so I began in July, and at that July meeting, there were transfers about $1.65 million. Those came out of revolving accounts. And so, and we did use revolving accounts last year as well. It's to be expected that we're going to use some revolving accounts. We should be using circuit breaker to contribute towards out-of-district tuitions. We don't just fund it through the town assessments. I think the concern is we have been using, probably for the last 4 fiscal years, more of our revolving accounts than we're actually coming in. And then also using excess and deficiency. You know, one of the parts of this year is I wish we had excess and deficiency to share. And part of the problem, though, is I'm not sure, and I didn't, and you know, I'd have to, and I should do this and send this to you. The increases in FY22 and FY22 and FY23 weren't big at all, and or certainly smaller than they've been the last 2 years. And I think not having a healthy budget or a healthy financial practice in maintaining a healthy excess and deficiency amount, you come to a year like this when I would have loved to advocate and ask school committee, can we put $2 million in as a revenue source to help the towns? Because this is an extraordinary situation this year, and we don't have it. And I think in part, if you look at our FY22 and FY23 budgets, they went over by about $2 million each year. And that's after they had been buffered by E&D as a revenue source. And so what it truly means is you're not truly capturing the costs of what it takes to run the district. And I do feel like we're there now, but it's been painful to get there.
Yep. Good question. Do you have a minimum for your excess and deficiency fund?
But it is the 5% cap. Okay. We operate by that.
Yeah, in both directions, 5% in both directions.
Okay.
So if you were deficient, if you can be deficient by 5%, and, yeah, you'd have to go back to the towns and say, hello, you need to give us some more money to make it
Good luck
up.
with that.
That's why we used excess and deficiency last year. And, you know, one thing I'd share with you all too, we did notify the towns immediately after we accessed excess and deficiency. Because we had been meeting with DESI on a weekly basis, they knew, you know, when we came back live, we were like, there's going to be an issue here. We feel like we have some revolving and grant funds we can apply, but we do feel like we may need to advocate to use some excess and deficiency. And on their recommendation, we did do that. We've also received a letter from DESI, though, letting us know that we shouldn't do that, and we should be giving towns 45 days, it's your right, to call a town meeting if you want to challenge our use of excess and deficiency, and we did not do that. And so I just want to publicly say that. You know, we didn't have another choice, I'll be honest with you, and I think DESI is kind of covering their bases. They were very good to us and supported us through this, but they were also the ones who recommended we do that, and we would have done it earlier if we knew the financial situation we're in. We know now, and I can guarantee you that if we think we're in a position where we may have to access the excess and deficiency, we'll make sure within our timelines, because that wasn't our intent. The other thing we did, though, at that meeting was we voted to take $200,000 of excess and deficiency and apply it to this year's budget. And then since it had already been passed by the towns, we gave that back to you in reducing your assessments. And so I just want to make sure we share that as well. And we thought that was the right thing to do. We did end up, though, last year, we were probably around, was it 400,000, did you say, in terms of having our remaining balance in excess
It
and
was like
deficiency?
375,000.
375.
Is all we left, sitting there.
So, you know, like I said.
If we ever get to the 5%, we'd be like the previous, and we'd have to give you back the money, like each of the towns back the money, so you can't get, like,
We'll take cash.
yes, I heard that.
For us, that'd be $5.8 million.
Yeah.
And so, you know, where we're at right now, our excess and deficiency, when it was certified this year, because we do have it done, it's a $1,233,000. It's about 1.06% of our operating budget. Like I said, this year, we continue to have some concerns about a couple of our lines. Operations and maintenance, which I think is always going to be something of a struggle, because you really can't predict when things are going to break. But then also special education tuitions, and you'll see that's really our major adjustment in terms of our assessments, line assessments that you'll see in this budget. We are hopeful that we're going to be able to balance this year's budget by using grants and our revolving funds and not touch excess and deficiency. Our plan is to hopefully not to do that. You know, we'll do that, we'll probably exhaust circuit breaker and a few other things to do that.
So is your revolving funds and your E&D, are they considered revenue offsetting expenses?
So the revolving funds you use to offset expenses. E&D can be used as a revenue source to offset expenses in a budget.
So,
But you wouldn't include a revolving fund. I wouldn't, if we were using a revolving fund to pay for something, that's not included in the expenses of the operating budget.
so I'm sort of,
Whereas like if you were using E&D, the expenses would be included in the operating
so I'm
budget.
sort of conditioned to the practice of, or the possibility of using one-time revenue to pay for ongoing expenses. And that you can take from your savings account or your excess monies, your bank account, if you will, and pay a bill. But the bill comes back again the next year. The monies you've taken out are gone. 'Cause
So
you paid-
our revolving funds, like the one that we use the most is circuit breaker, it's a reimbursement. So a special education reimbursement, so you hope that you do see that coming every year. And same with grants, you use to supplement your budget. We have entitlement grants that we get every single year.
So you're
Yeah, but
you're
E&D would be
anticipating-
like that. E&D, it's like when you take it out, you're taking your savings.
Well,
You're reducing your savings.
So there's two things. You take away your savings without
Yeah.
question. But you're using it against expenses that are reoccurring for which you have not replaced that revenue. right?
Yeah, I guess you could say that.
And so now at that point, next year, all you're doing is compounding it for the next year. Next year now, you have that bill come in, you didn't have it, you don't have that money because it wasn't there last time, but you find a place for it. It's gone, what do you use it for? How do you come up with the money? That's the condition that, we've come through here. And we've gone through this whole process with the 2.5 override and trying to understand what we're looking to do. And we came out of last year with the idea that we had a pretty good handle on stuff, and 2.5 was going to get us to a point where we knew where we were going with our funding, and all of a sudden we're finding out, boy, we didn't know it. And so if you hear any pushback, it's going to be because of where we are. And I understand you're in the same position.
Yeah, I fully understand. One of the things, it's really exactly the scenario you just described, right? That's why we're trying to adjust or make the adjustment in the special education out-of-district tuitions, is because those budgets in '22 and '23, clearly it wasn't a properly developed assessment, right? And so that's why there is an adjustment in this year's budget, because it's not a cost we have a lot of control over. If a child is eligible for a placement, these are the services that they need, we have to provide them. And so, just to answer your question too, you'll see that actual total budget is, I think, around 10 million, 9 or 10 million. But what's charged, I think, this year is it three something? We'll
get
go over.
there.
We'll get there,
Yeah,
but
I think
just to
we'll
let you
answer
know,
a lot of that as
to
we
bring
go
it
through.
down.
Don't jump ahead, is what
Yeah,
you're saying.
no, it's a good
Yeah.
question, and
Yeah.
it's good because we'll remember to emphasize it when we get there. Next year, to defray those costs, so it's not all on the assessment, right? We're using a $1.5 million in the IDEA grant, and we're using, planning to use $4.25 million in circuit breaker.
Would it say, I'm sorry, don't mean to take all the time, but is it fair to say that because the accounts that weren't closed out earlier, they led to, they created the inability to be able to budget correctly in those other years? And are you confident now that you're at a point where your data is sufficient to be able to produce budgets going forward?
Yeah, I think we're confident that the data is good. I can tell you that the margins in this budget, I know it doesn't feel like it, they're razor thin. And so one of the things you'll see is contractual obligations are about $3 million. But then if you look at the actual increase from FY '24 to FY '25, it's about $2,600,000.
Okay.
It's because we think we found $400,000 there, and we can have some efficiencies in the district to do that. And we're taking a risk there, I'll be honest with you.
Well, yeah, you bet on everything.
And what I'd say to you about the question on FY '22 and FY '23, wasn't here for either of those years when those budgets were developed. I know for us, the one kind of hanging piece that we didn't know was the special education tuitions. And so when we knew that, it's actually, I know we talked about it during that school committee meeting. And we talked about, we're going to have to watch these line items because this was information that we didn't know when we developed the actual budget. But to answer your question, I do have, I have full faith in Michelle, but I also do have really a high level of confidence of us knowing finally, like, this is what it's going to cost and things. I would tell you that we are rolling the dice with the margins here. You know, we really tried not to, if we could find anything to pare back, we did. And as we go through and show you different things like our insurance, you'll see what it goes up is what the quotes we've gotten, it's going to go up, and that's why it's at what it's at.
So experience will provide clarity.
Yeah.
And so you're getting there.
Yeah, we're hoping.
Yeah.
We're trying, definitely. And so, you know, when we came into FY '25, you know, we really did, much like yourselves, it was a surprise for us. And so when the numbers came out at the end of January, a couple of things hit us that we weren't expecting. The big one is that we entered into what they call Chapter 70 hold harmless. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that a little bit later, exactly what it means. I'd say there are two primary reasons why it happened in the district. One was a decrease in enrollment, but the bigger factor, to be honest, was the reduction in the inflation rate that went from 4.58 down to a little bit more than 1%.
Like 1.3 or 1.3.
What inflation rate went down?
What they use to calculate that required minimum local contribution, that foundation budget, the state,
Yeah,
the
I was gonna
state.
say, it's no inflation rate has
Yeah.
gone down anywhere.
So they used, when they were calculating what, in the last 2 years, they used a 4.5% cap on the inflation rate, which inflation was greater than that, but then this year, inflation has declined, but then they changed their inflation rate from an inflated rate to, like, now to 1.35% was what they were using as the inflation rate when calculating the Chapter 70 foundation budget.
So that hit the assessments to the towns hard. The other thing was, like I said, we had to make an adjustment for special ed tuitions. We didn't have available reserves, so we, right now in our revolving funds, we are watching FY '24 closely. And then, as I shared, we have about $1 million in E&D, but we also don't want to be in a case like last year where we had to use $950 and not have it. And so that's why we're taking the approach we are. And then also, we can share with you, every year, all of our towns, and especially Rutland, to be honest with you, you're getting hit harder by the state, and that they're making a determination that you can pay a larger share. They make a calculation, typically it can be between 1.5% and 2.5%. I think you might be at 2.5%.
No, theirs was, they showed it, it was like 5 or something.
That was for the vocation.
No, but they're calculating for this town for all schools. It's all, that when they're calculating that target share.
Yeah, that's a state
So that's how they're
I didn't realize
increasing
that.
them
That
to
was
get to target share. So their target share for us would be the same as their target share for Bay Path or
I
whatever.
hadn't realized that, so it's
Yeah.
even worse than I thought. What does hold harmless mean? So hold harmless is a thing by the state where they put in place, and I think originally it was put in place where it's for, typically, I think, for smaller towns and places that were having decreasing enrollment. And it was meant to making sure that towns wouldn't have funding cliffs, like, so if they're getting 50 kids less a year or 100 kids and continually going down, there was some financial stability for the district. In our case, it doesn't work well at all because we had a reduction, I think
it was only like 46 students.
yeah. And, out of 6,850 are usually around where we're at. And I did say it is primarily the inflation factor, but for us, it was a really heavy hit. And because we're only going down by that many students, it's not like, Michelle comes from Southwick, and Southwick had started at, I think, 1,600 or something like that, and now they're down to 1,200. Well, when they're hold harmless and they have 400 less students, hold harmless does them okay. For us, though, and I'm going to show you what the difference in our aid increase has been, it's been a huge hit. The big thing is that you're not eligible for a Chapter 70 increase when you're in held harmless. And really what they give you is an increase of $30 per student in Chapter 78. So for us, that was about $200,000. We're one of 211 districts in Massachusetts. Well, about 2/3 of the districts in Massachusetts are in hold harmless. I think the majority of them is because of the change in the inflation factor. 80 districts, including Wachusett, went into hold harmless this year. So a lot of people have been impacted by it and impacted hard. If you look at what it meant, these are our Chapter 70 increases that we've experienced over the last about 5 years. And so in FY '20, our increase was about $1 million. FY '21, almost $1.5 million. FY '22, that's COVID. And so that's when everyone was out of school. I don't know if you remember, we didn't get a lot of our budget material from the state until about July. But there was also a lot of grants and other things that were going on that were supporting schools. We rebounded right after that, had an increase of $2.6 million, almost 2.7. Last year, we had an increase of $3.4 million in Chapter 78. This year, it's $200,000.
How long does hold harmless stay in effect?
Should
Until
just
you
be-
get your numbers up?
Yeah, and you know what, I would think, so and I'm happy to share, we're doing some things around population study and trying to anticipate if we're going to be in this situation ever again. And then I don't think they're going to be able to reduce the inflation rate any more than they already have. And so I feel like we would be in good shape next year. I have to do a little research in that in terms of what it means when you come out of hold harmless, if you go right back to similar calculations in terms of the state and what it might look like for us. I can tell you that based on the preliminary data we have, we're not going to have another reduction in students. We need to do some work in the district, and I'm going to share this with you, making sure we're holding on to kids. Like, you just heard from Bay Path, and we're sending more kids to Bay Path than we were before. And we have to ask ourselves, like, I think the vocational model is great. I'm not saying it's not. But what I am saying is, as a district, we should be asking ourselves, why are more kids wanting to go to vocational schools? Are there some things that we could be doing that would make us more attractive to some of those students that are now going there? And we are doing some of that work, and I can share that with you a little bit later. The other thing that was happening for tuitions or for kids who are attending out-of-state or out-of-district programs, was the state approved an increase in their tuition. So this year, all those programs were able to put in up to a 14% increase in their tuition. And next year, the state has approved an increase in those programs up to 4.69%, and almost every program is using that maximum amount. And so we had issues with funding, and then they pretty much raised their tuitions up to 20% in the last 2 years.
Who's doing that?
State.
The state says.
State's approving it, and the programs are doing it.
Which programs?
Special ed,
the sped programs. Okay.
out of district
All right.
special ed.
So, when you go to, this was a question I wanted to ask on the last page. When you go to set that budget, what's killing you? Is it their tuition increase rates, or is it finding out in the middle of the year that this kid needs to go, or is it both?
It's not the kids needing to go, and I'll be honest with you, overall, that line item's reduced a little bit this year, and mostly not for kids who had special education placements, but at times the district was approving placements that weren't special education approved programs that are circuit breaker reimbursable. And we have a new special education director, and honestly, she's done a wonderful job making sure that we're not approving placements that we shouldn't be. We should be approving placements that kids need and that they're legally entitled to, but there are other placements that we shouldn't have been improving. And so I think we're managing that better, but the other two things hit us hard. 20% increase, 20% next year. This year it was 14. But the other thing is that we also hadn't properly budgeted for it, and we needed to do that. And so we own that piece. We have to.
That was the second thing. The increase, like, I didn't even know about the increase. And then not properly knowing what to budget for, then got hit to find out, oh my gosh.
And I had
we're
one
gonna
other
be way
question.
up.
Tell me if this might come up later on, but would a decrease in student enrollment be an area or an instance when you might consider looking at opening school choice again?
Yeah, we're going to talk about
We're
that.
gonna talk about that.
Yep, absolutely.
One quick question. Do you know about how many students you have in the district that are going out?
No, I need to get that number for you.
I don't want to say the number either.
Not because we don't want to share it, because.
Yeah, I just am not sure, like, I can
We can
get
send
that
it to you.
information.
I feel bad too, because we had, the earlier presentation we sent isn't this exact presentation, so we'll make sure we send this presentation to you. Any questions you have, some follow-up, I'll be happy to share it with you.
I'm curious, and again, if this will come up later or in a different section, let me know, but the costs associated with the out-of-district placement, is there anything that we could be doing to our special education to keep them in district?
Yeah,
so that we're paying for our own kids and not.
We're looking at that.
Yeah, we're looking at that, and we're looking at that pretty hard, I'll be honest with you. Yes, I'd say a couple things. We have good in-district programs. I think when you look at potentially bringing in an out-of-district program and servicing those kids in-house, there's a number of benefits. I'm going to say number one, it's better for the kids in those services because they're actually in district. A lot of times we're sending these kids to programs that maybe more than a half an hour away, and they're not really included in a lot of district activities. Number two, I'd say it's good for the kids in the school, all kids. It's a good message when we're including all of our students in a school, and we can all learn from each other. And most of our schools do have, in-district programs, but there are a few that don't. And we definitely are looking at that and looking at partnerships. I say this and people always get upset, and so, but I'm going to say it. I think we have to look at our relationship with collaboratives. And so we have students who are attending collaboratives, and I think what I would want people to know is I'm not suggesting that we break our agreements with kids who are in out-of-district placements. Honestly, I think a lot of those placements are very much needed. Those kids need it. They deserve that educational opportunity. But we also send kids to collaboratives, and I think one thing the district hasn't done that it should do is it has the opportunity at times to join collaboratives, and when you do that, you typically have a reduced rate, and then you also have reduced transportation costs. And so my guess is next year when we come back, we'll share with you that we're joining a collaborative, and it won't necessarily make a difference in terms of students who are out of district or even kids who attend that particular program, but there would be a cost savings associated because we'd be a member of those collaboratives. And then the other piece that we really should be looking at is it is better for kids. There are cost savings if you bring these programs back into district. And, we could potentially even be looking at some, not bringing programs that we run back, as soon as next year, but we're definitely pursuing all the opportunities that we can think of.
We do have special ed programs that are in districts and behavioral programs and things like that.
Yeah, we have district-wide
programs.
programs. It's just, and typically when a child goes to an out-of-district, placements, because we can't, we don't have the programming for that, and they have specialized needs, and like I said, it's like, they need it, and we should be providing it. But we should also, especially and that's why I give the collaborative case, it's not because I'm advocating we should be sending kids to collaboratives more often. What I'm advocating for is, if you are sending kids to collaborative, be a member and get some cost savings.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So those are some of the things we
And
need
if
to
it
look at.
helps you out any, we are average. We don't have an abundance of kids that are in out of district and in district, even matching how DESE does their calculation, or the state does their calculation for foundation budget. The factors that they use match what we use, and even the percent of our budget is pretty, it's right on the average of where we're at. We're not in a unique situation with special ed.
Okay, all right. No, I mean, if I'm looking at it right, I'm just
It's
looking at,
huge.
the transportation budget for the out-of-district is half the rest of the transportation for the entire district. That's
It's door to door.
crazy to me.
Door to
I think
door.
that's the other thing that we look at, and, we were talking to the school committee, the other night. There's a lot of work to do here.
Yeah.
I think we're feeling better about how we calculate finances, but there's still a lot of things that we need to look into, and some of them are pretty complex. One of the things I think we should explore as a district, and I think we've talked about it kind of on a superficial level, is looking at that. Those are different vendors that we use. Those costs can be quite high. And so that is something potentially the district could look at in the future in terms of, is that something we could help support in a different way?
So if I understand, the only reason we have out-of-district is because we don't have the programs here for them.
Correct.
Yeah, but I would.
That's the main reason.
Correct.
Yeah, but I would also say it would be we wouldn't be able to provide those kids services in district. And so sometimes you can look, if you have enough kids and you have the expertise, you could look at bringing a program back in. But, some of the students we're talking about have highly specialized needs, and they need the particular programs.
I guess I'm thinking that if they have to go outside because we don't have the programs, trying to implement those programs would be more costly than sending them.
In some
out.
cases,
In some cases, but
Yeah.
it doesn't take many special ed students to do that. It's just particularly difficult in a regional school district because you might have one kid from Rutland, one kid from Sterling, one kid from somewhere else. Well, where do you put them then? And, so it really only takes a few students to make the program worthwhile, but then in a regional, where are you putting them? Where's that program going to reside? You're still coming up with some challenges.
There are,
So-
definitely good questions, though, and I think
Yeah.
we need to have the answers, and we need to have looked into it. and to be able to provide them
And
to
you
you.
have to have the people and the skills to run those programs, so it's not just a snap of the finger. And then you already have kids, their parent, you've already agreed, we're sending them to the specialized program. They could be perfectly happy, content, and getting the best thing. So to just be like, oh, yep, here you go, you can come back in now, it's not a simple
Okay.
fix.
you.
Oh, they're all great questions. And so, as stated earlier, we didn't fund it right in FY '23, and so this year's appropriation, we're still underfunded and we're watching it, and so we needed to put in a major correction in that appropriation for FY '25.
What percentage of your budget is special education?
I think it's about like 25%.
Okay.
Maybe a little bit less. I'd have to do the math on that. I think it's like 28 million this year for a $122 million
That's in
budget.
and out of district.
That's,
Total.
the total special ed, staffing, transportation, every nickel we spend.
Is that
on
growing?
Special ed.
All the time?
It has, particularly in the last couple of years, there's been, across the state, there's been a lot more special ed placements, out-of-district placements.
I'd say proportionally, we're in line with a lot of districts in terms of what we're spending. I think.
But overall, it's probably gone up in the last.
Yep, oh, yeah,
It
no,
is, yeah.
definitely.
You're
I know, no, absolutely. And I think the other thing I'd share about it is, we need to improve in special education. And so, but what I'd say is, when we look at it, we're trying to look at it as how we spend the money, not necessarily the bucket of money that we're spending on it, because its percentage of the budget is fairly healthy. But I think we clearly aren't getting the results that we want to in special education, and so we have to start asking ourselves if we're putting it in the right places.
You're just trying to be responsible on how you
That's right.
spend it versus it's
That's
gonna
exactly
go.
it.
And I don't think there's anybody in this room that thinks it shouldn't, but
Oh,
I just
yeah,
think it's just
It's a lot of money.
trying to get the best bang for your buck.
Absolutely.
There's another issue over the years that with all the mandates the state had placed on SPED, that they haven't stepped forward with the money to support the program.
It's an interesting question. We're,
I'm trying to think of,
No,
the state
yeah.
is shoving that issue, all these mandates, onto the cities and towns.
Yeah, I think there's certainly more accountability, and I would say in the state, but also what we see in the district, we're not successful with those students to the level we should be. And so if you looked in Wachusett, the students who are failing the most are our special education students. Their percentage in terms of their achievement on MCAS and other assessments, they don't do as well as our other students, and it's glaring, the difference. And that's less than ideal. There's usually some gap, but I would say our gap is unacceptable, and we really need to address it. It's SPED, it's also really what they call the high needs group. And so that's your English learners, your special education, then your kids who come from a lower socioeconomic status families. And those are the kids you really you want to embrace and care about. And right now, it's going to be a major focus for us in the next few years in terms of us trying to turn that around. And it's a problem across the state, but I would say in Wachusett, it's pretty clear we got to do it.
I don't think special education takes any different of a hit than any other program within the town for unfunded mandates. So
Yeah.
I think it's equal across the board. I think you guys, unfortunately, you've got we have it all over the town in all different budgets, in all different things, and it's unfortunate that the kids suffer with it there, so it's not, I think it's everywhere.
Yeah.
The unfunded mandates are bad all the way through, but it's just, it affects these kids worse.
Yeah, and I think what I would say is, I understand why people are concerned, and we should be concerned. Because these kids, they need some support, and we're right now, we're not getting them the support that we'd like to, to make a difference. This is a slide I was talking about a little bit earlier. And so for excess and deficiency, we had put $950 towards FY22. That was as a revenue source. We put FY23 was a revenue source of about $850,000, but then we put another $950 towards it to make that budget amendment that I shared, and then we put $200,000 in E&D towards this year's budget. And so we've used close to $3 million of E&D to help support the 22 through 24 budgets. And it's partly why we're where we are right now in terms of our balance. Town share of the local budget, and, I think you're all aware of all these things, and so there's a determination that each town share of net school spending is going to continue to rise. This has gotten even worse by the reduction in Chapter 70, and so that percentage increases even more, and it's really impacted the FY25 revenue structure, and so this budget represents an increase of 4.97%. But overall, the town assessments for, the average is 6.12%. And then here in Rutland, it's the second highest. It's only lower than Princeton. It's 7.76%, which is higher than I think even last year. And
I
like I
think
said,
they were higher
no,
last year.
Yeah, it may have been at 9.
Rutland was
No,
higher
roughly
last
9,
year.
Right.
There's an increase.
And so, thank you. The additional challenges that we can go over with our transportation contract is 11.5% this year. That went out to bid, and so it's a bidding process. We put it out, and then we're beholden on whoever puts in for a bid. We only had one bidder, and this is what they came at. It's our current vendor, AA Transportation. It gets better after this year. Every year after in the contract, it's 5.1%. You'll see an increase of 5.5, but that's because we do a bond that Michelle puts through. So the increase shouldn't be as high in the next couple of years, and I think we have an option for years 4 and 5 to be at 5.5%. But obviously, that's a huge increase this year. And so the other thing that hits us hard, and I think it was mentioned earlier, 79-80% of your budget is going to be your people. And our contractual obligations this year are about $3 million. We have a significant staff.
Is there any thought or consideration for trying to control those contractual costs coming up?
Yeah, so I'd share with you, we're currently in a 3-year agreement with the teachers. The COLAs that we had negotiated with school committee, 2% this year, 2.25% next year, and then it's 2.75% in the third year. What I'd point out about years 2 and 3, next year we're going to have parent conferences for all grade levels in Wachusett, which is nice. We were only offering it at the high school and then I think K through 2. And so a lot of parents were frustrated and like, well, I'd like to have a chance to talk to my child's teacher. So we will have that next year, which is kind of an extra nighttime obligation for the teachers. And then in the third year of the contract, we got an extra professional development day. Right now, we have 3 professional development days, but it's really only 2. You got opening day, which is usually you come meet with teachers, they get ready for the first day of school, and you kind of lose that day. Most districts, and we really needed to, one of the things we're doing is implementing new curriculums, and we're really trying to improve our ability, not just with special education, but for all kids. If they have a particular need, we're trying to improve our ability to give them the help they need, whether they're special education or not. And so we really are doing a lot of PD to both support the new curriculum and then also look at our practice. And so having that third day is going to be a big help. And so,
How many how many contracts do you deal with? Does the school committee have
yeah,
to deal with?
I think we're at 9.
Yeah, we have 9 bargaining units, and we deal with 7 different
Parent union organizations.
organizations that oversee them. So we have like Teamsters, MTA, AFSCME, SEIUU, or whatever. Like there's, it's an incredible, I don't know any other organization that is dealing with 7 different union representations within their organization and all their little nuances.
How many have you got, Austin?
6.
It's crazy.
So in this year's budget, the teachers line, total teachers line went up 3.8%. And you just said 2.
So, I don't know. Are you reading this narrative?
I'm reading the budget draft
The line
line by
item.
line.
Okay, so what is the teacher?
Well, it went up-
Well, there's a lot of teacher lines in there, so that's hard. You're looking at the line by line draft.
I'm looking at the line that says it went up 1.488.
There's a bunch of teacher lines in there.
We can, I know what you're saying though, and we can tell you. So
Yeah.
the COLA adjustment is what the increase is across the contract. With teachers, there are also what they call steps and lanes.
Okay,
And
so that's
and-
up.
There you
We're
go.
fine.
And so that calculation includes those as well, which is a little bit more, it's more than the COLA. And so, I'm trying to think of how many steps we have.
14,
Yeah.
I think.
13 or
That's
14, yeah.
And so,
14,
and so there'll be contractual obligations as, until people.
Within that, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, as people they can move lanes. And so you might have somebody who gets, when they get their master's, or if they end up getting their doctorate or something like that, they get into a different lane, which is an increase as well, and it's based on their education level.
So we have one of your principals in the room, and I think he's a pretty great guy, but how come they went down by 10,000, the principal's
Because
line? Did
they're-
you lose one?
So, no. So we don't have contractual salary increases for them yet. And so that's included in another line. If you look, there's a payroll line that has,
Reserve 650.
yeah. So we have set aside reserves for those.
So none of those guys
increase.
took cut and pay.
No.
I would
We
hope
just,
not.
they have dollars set aside in salary reserve. So,
Typically, they get the COLA that's associated with the unions.
yeah.
But the hard thing for administrators is they don't have the step increase as well.
So when you guys give us, this is, in the last 2 years since you guys came on the scene, this is without going to, whatever you did that time, go to the state and ask them for this budget.
No, I went to I didn't go to the state. I went
Freedom
to
of
the
information.
records, I went to the records officer at the school district and asked.
We are, I'll be for one in this room that's very thankful that you guys have
Yes.
gone this far, because we used to get stuff from them that I don't even think several MIT PhDs could figure out what they did. They gave it to them in hieroglyphics, and they said, "Here you go, guys," and threw it across the desk. So, this is great, and I appreciate it. That's, I guess where I want to go is thank you. It's a start, but for me, when I see the principal, I don't know how you make it all work, or maybe it has to be expanded, but when I see, it concerns me that the principals took a 10,000, if you look at that line value, it says 10,000 less. So that, I don't know how we make it so that we can actually, it's a realistic number. Because to me, it's still, there's a lot of different lines that Darren doesn't understand, and I'm sure that I'm not the only one here that doesn't understand that if I go to line 32, I can see where they got an extra $600,000, so.
I've got you. I think we do feel much better that the lines.
It's getting there.
Yeah, and they reflect what, Michelle's very good about populating the right lines, you know what I mean? Like, it's in the salary reserves, because we don't know what that cost would be. And some of that is, we have a couple more contracts that we need to negotiate this year. And so we try to make sure we have at least some buffer to negotiate and do some things. Not excessive amounts, but, you know,
But just
trying
for
to make sure we can be consistent in what we offer our different units.
For the non-Michelle, Karen, and Lynn's in the room, if you could make it so that under that we knew the total, so that I wouldn't know where, it's still.
So there's a total salaries there, like 3/4 of the way down the page, that will match what the appropriate, that's just the detail
Okay,
behind
but
the
I don't know how
appropriation.
to tie it
They
back.
can't do it the way you want to do it because the unions are in negotiations, and until the union negotiations are finished, they have to leave it here because otherwise they're playing their hand before they can.
Okay.
Thank you.
See, that's,
Not negotiating in good faith.
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
the technical way.
They're showing
I
a hand beforehand, that's all it
I
is.
think the other thing is that we're
perfectly
gonna
fine with
hire, we're scheduled to hire a high school principal, a principal at Wachusett Middle School.
We've had some interim
and so-
principals as well.
And
that
so we
meet
don't
with
know
us.
what those exact salaries will be, and so that's a
I
little bit.
just didn't know
of the-
why it wasn't shown now, I
It's a-
gotta explain. to you.
It's a great
You don't have
question.
to-
Yeah.
It's a legitimate question.
Now I
It's really good.
understand.
No, and I think, like, hey, we should be able to answer that stuff for you. And so this was the crisis, you know, frustrating process that the district followed in FY '22 and '23 in developing their budget. 2.95 in excess and deficiency that was not available, had been used in FY '22 to '24, and now was down to a really small amount. We had over a $2.5 million increase in special ed tuitions and transportations needed. We entered Chapter 70 hold harmless, And all of that has resulted in the largest overall town assessment increase in recent years. It's not where we started. I'll just let you know. I think you go into every kind of year hoping with hope, and I guess is what I'd say. We started this process, and we met with all building principals. We met with all the department heads. We had a budget retreat with school committee members. We showed them all the requests from principals. We showed them the departmental requests. We talked about our strategic plan. We just finished our strategic plan. We looked at it. We said, hey, what can we invest in? What would we like to put towards this? What are some building and school requests that make sense? Because each school, Dave will tell you, at Central Tree, he's got a couple of things that make Central Tree a little bit different, and he's going to want to support. Because we don't want to make cookie cutter schools everywhere, like cultures matter. And so we went through that whole process, and we were feeling pretty decent, and we were starting to forecast what the expenses would be this year based on '24. But then with school committee, when we were at that point, I think the priorities we really came up with at that budget retreat was we were going to look at school and department requests and try to meet more of those. We gave a slide last year about all the things that people asked for that we couldn't give them, and we were going to try to hit a couple of those and say, hey, you know what, can we make this happen? We were really looking to upgrade our technology for teachers. And so we get a little bit of a discrepancy where high school teachers have laptops or middle school and KL to 6 elementary or 5 elementary teachers have netbooks. We are implementing a new curriculum. The machines have the capacity to do the program, but I would say that we really could. It would have been great to have gotten them some new computers this year. We're also hoping to make some class size adjustments because we're in an interesting process where some of the numbers are going down in the district. High school's going down a little bit. Elementary's going up. Naquag we're watching closely this year because they're definitely probably going to need another kindergarten classroom. And then counseling staff, we're continuing to try to work to get everybody at a 1.0 at every school at least. And then we're also hoping to do some facility improvements. High school right now is in tough shape. High school's been about 20 years since they had a major investment. Probably have about $1.5 million in projects that need to get started on and underway. Their rooftop units and some other things need to start to get replaced. And then they had a couple of really serious needs that I'm going to talk to you about in a while because we did decide to try to still put those in the budget because they're safety issues.
I have one question, one thing that I just think, maybe you forgot to mention it, but I know you meet with the town administrators, ours included, on a monthly basis. And when you had the budget retreat, I don't hear that you brought the concerns from the towns into that.
In terms of what piece?
In terms of we can't afford it, and how are we going to help the towns, and how are we going to get as much as we can, but also not completely bury a town.
Yep, and so I'm going to show you where that happened.
Okay.
No, it's okay, you're foreshadowing the next slide. All right, and so we're like, we can't do that, okay?
Just to make sure.
No, and that's what I'm trying to show you, like, look, this is how we were hoping to approach it, and this is how we approached it, all right? And yeah, clearly, we couldn't do that, and especially when we got the numbers, and that was after the budget retreat, and we were like, holy cow, where are we at? To think about the impact on the towns, right? But really, the new approach was, can we protect some essential services here? Because what we really didn't want to do is hurt the kids. And so, we had a new approach, and that was basically what in this strategic plan was absolutely essential for us to protect. And really, for us, it's that new ELA curriculum for the elementary level. We really needed to move on to the program that we were using. It was not recommended by the state. It's been pushed by the state now, really to get everybody off of it. And it was one of the things we committed to and really did not want to go away from. We had some facility work that we really do need to do, particularly at the high school and then also at the ECC. Those projects, primarily at the high school, we have an intercom system that's not working consistently. And so if there was emergency at the school, there are some days where I don't have 100% confidence that every kid would hear the message if there was, God forbid, an emergency in the school. And so that's something we definitely have to address. I'd say the other thing is that the amphitheater, the theater this year doesn't have an operating sound system. We're renting one. Wachusett sports are fantastic. Girls are in the state finals tomorrow night at the Songus Arena for basketball. We also have great arts, and the theater program, the music program, all of those things deserve support too. And to not have a functioning sound system is something that we feel like they deserve to have. So that's the other project we put in for the high school. And then at the ECC, the Early Childhood Center, they're the only school that doesn't have an emergency generator. And, you're talking about 3 to 5-year-olds. And so if there's an emergency, we would like them to have that level of protection. And then that also would provide us in central office, and we have our technology infrastructure there. And so if there's an issue that central office is down, it can impact our email and some of our other informational technology services, and so it would help us with that as well. We had $100,000 set aside for that project, but when we got the quote, it came in at $250, and so we put in for the additional $150. There was a lead time on generators, which, who knew, about 60 weeks, so we couldn't get it anyways, but, just to share, to close the loop on that, we did add that additional money. What we're hoping to do.
So you don't have a generator at the high school?
We do.
Oh, you do?
We do. It's only at
At the high, we're
yep.
looking, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we do it at all of our schools, with the exception of the Early Childhood
The old
Center, which is
Jefferson School.
Yeah,
Okay.
Jefferson School.
Yeah.
Thank you. Except for that, with the exception of that building.
And our servers are there too, so, for the district, so that's the
At
other piece of
Jefferson?
it, yeah,
And
because
probably
that's
the
our
most
central
needy
office.
kids.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
I mean, they have
Exactly.
everything, I mean, promote that, right? Those are the guys that need it.
Yep. 3 to 5-year-olds with pretty profound needs, absolutely.
Did you say you had to trash and replace the ELA program at the elementary level?
No, we are not, we're keeping.
You're keeping
Yeah,
the
we've
F&P?
already committed to that,
No,
we had.
we have moved on from Fontenay Pinel.
Yes,
We've
yeah.
selected into reading, and we had PD on it a couple weeks ago.
So they updated that to a highly qualified
Yes.
program?
Yes. We did not abandon that in the budget, that was like we're not.
But F&P
abandoning
is
it.
Fontenay Pinel, and that is
Oh,
the
yeah.
program we moved on from.
Okay, yeah.
The other thing is we didn't put in the class size adjustments or mental health supports, okay? So there are no additional staff in this budget. We're hoping. We have done some work in the district, and so it's a good example of a couple of schools. I mean, Dave has an additional special ed teacher, which we did that, supported that through the special education budget. But at Naquag, you have a BCBA now, and we did that. It wasn't a position that we added where it was more of an efficiency, and so we had a couple of staff positions that weren't BCBA's, and we looked, and our special ed director and Christina Pelzarski had a conversation.
For those of us not in education, what's a BCBA?
A behavioral specialist, would it
Thank
be?
you.
I'm sorry.
Certified behavioral specialist, I don't know.
That's
what
okay,
exactly.
it's just what, I'm like,
Yeah.
I
Board
don't know
certified
what
behavior,
that is, and I'm
board
gonna be
certified
one to
behavioral
ask.
analyst. And thank you, and I'm sorry.
That's okay.
You get infected when all you do is
Well,
like use
that's
all
what
this
in
jargon.
general likes to use.
No, it's totally cool. And so, it wasn't, I think we only had a couple across the district. And Christina and Joan talked and said, hey, what do you need? And she's like, I love BCBA. And so we're trying to do moves like that consistently. So when I talk about special education and how we allot services, that's what I mean. It's like we got to ask ourselves, do we have the right people in the right positions to support kids? And sometimes have the courage about making some different decisions. And honestly, Christina's been a leader in that work. So that's been really good. And we hope to continue to do that. And we're hoping that, if we have a particular need or need a kindergarten teacher at Naquag, we're going to be able to find the position that we don't need and then fill that position. Because we do worry about class sizes and some other things. But, to be transparent, those were the adjustments we made. We took all of those things out of the budget. So, where did we end? Oh, this is my favorite part, because this is Michelle.
Somebody else gets to talk.
So here's your enrollment update. It's for all the towns. Rutland is highlighted. So you do own 24.28% of the students in the district. So that's your share of enrollment, and you had an increase this year of 14 more students, which is a 0.86% increase. The next slide is your minimum local. You saw that. I was off by, I thought it was 5.38. It's 5. I couldn't see their slide very well. But they shared the same numbers with you, that your minimum local increased by 5.36%.
So is our minimum the same with you, with Wachusett, as it is with?
So it's
them, or
probably
it
that
differs a
same,
little bit?
it's that same 5.36%, but they share it out. I'm just showing you the Wachusett portion. They had both the Wachusett and the they had grabbed our numbers and added them too. But they are like, if I was going to look, I'd have to particularly look, they had to look up Wachusett. I didn't go look up what the Bay Path was.
Vocational, yeah.
Because it doesn't, this is our starting point for you, so. So our budget by appropriation, let me just explain. I explained to the other towns that in previous years, our trouble in creating the budget in our FY '22 and FY '23, the previous budgets were created on a previous budget, and they just would add 3% to salaries and would actually take that salary reserve line and just throw in $4 million, so that was just a flat 3%. And then if you looked at benefit and insurance, they were calculating, they knew the number, and weren't even using the right increase, and they'd put like 9% for benefits and insurance on a previous budget number. And the list would go on, but like instructional support, operations, maintenance, pupil services, it would be 0%. There was no increase. So last year, when I came in, I did a really great job with salaries and stipends, went through all the collective bargaining agreements, adjusted people to the correct levels, figured out what the cost of living adjustment is, and gave like a number behind all those lines, what the actual costs were going to be. And then the others, I looked at spending, but I really honestly, even though I gave you that last year, it was really looking at each of those objects and going, okay, this is what I think we're going to spend in '22. This is what I think we're going to end up spending in '23, and looked at actual expenditures. And as Jim described earlier, this year, I was trying to even make a further move for a needs-based budget. So we met with 20 departments and said, hey, what do you need? How much is it going to cost you? You tell me what's behind those lines, and I'm going to populate those lines for you for what you're actually going to be spending out of those lines. So we were optimistic to do a lot more than what we did. For the school building principals, they did give me some of their information as far as like supplies, materials, some contracted services. Most of them didn't ask for much of an increase or an increase at all. Some of them even dropped some of their supply needs because with the new program, they're figuring there'll be less costs for paper and things like that for copying because it's coming with some materials for the students. So I actually used what they gave me. So that, like, trying to move to that needs-based budget. So our increase in salary and stipends this year, Jim said our contractual bargained agreements plus what our salary reserve that we're putting aside for salary reserve was actually about, he said it was over $3 million is what it calculated out at. We dropped that a little because we needed money in other areas, and we're making an assumption that there are going to be open positions. We have almost 1,300 employees. We're not always fully staffed. So we're taking we're stripping away, like this is how tight the budget is. We're making an assumption that we're going to have open positions and not going to need that full increase. Further on the salaries and stipends, so you have some framework of what to expect in previous years. When I looked at just the Unit A, which is our teachers and other professional staff, their increase when we look at steps, when they go up a step or they change a lane, their increase plus their cost of living adjustment for next year with the 2.25% COLA, their actual increase is 4.25%. So we're looking at next year 2.75. So I would anticipate, and all of our units, our custodial units, our secretarial unit, all of our units have these steps. So our actual increases in salaries are going to exceed 4% every year. So, to be fair, and probably more like 4.5%. So anyway, so that's how we arrived at that number. Like, it's real people behind real dollars. The benefits and insurance, our increase in insurance this year, we had a great increase. It was only 5.3%, so that's not outrageous. We also have an increase in there for Worcester County Regional Retirement System. That was a 9.48% increase, so that's for members who contribute to that retirement system. It's the organization's piece to pay. Instructional support, that includes that getting rid of Font and Pinellas and going to the new interreading program. That increase is about $250,000 based on our, I think we put 440 this year, and then our next 2 years are 300 and something thousand and another 300. So it's a 3-year program, but we committed to it for this year.
And much like we have done everything we can to avoid touching staff, we did continue all our curriculum programs. We didn't cut any of them because we're trying very hard not to cut services to kids.
And that line also includes all of our instructional supports and materials, and it includes our technology and copier leases. We've had some cost savings on our leases for our copiers and stuff. So that the 250, you see a little decrease in that, so we just squeezed as much as we could out of there. Operations and maintenance, I don't know if you told them this already, but the $500,000 that we plan to do of $350,000 at the high school.
The generator.
Okay, and then the generator, adding another $150,000 to get that generator in place. And then I've just made a real conscious effort to go back and look at all of our building maintenance. We're always behind in this, and to look at better actual costs and increased slightly to make sure we're at least budgeting what we've expended in the last couple of years. We have seen, there's a decrease actually in our heating fuel. We locked in with French River Collaborative in June of last year, so our heating fuel, I don't remember how many buildings this covers, but our heating fuel is about $920,000 this year. I'm budgeting $788 based on the decrease in cost, $788,000 instead. So that again really tight. Our pupil services line, that's our health, our nursing offices and athletics. Years ago, I guess, I don't know how many years ago, they took the athletic services out of the budget and are controlling them through a revolving fund. So the kids who are paying the athletic fees, it all goes into a revolving account, and then all of the payments are made through that revolving fund. That revolving fund is overexpended at this point, like $127,000, because we haven't raised fees in so long. How that hits us is we'll get less E&D. So like that gets hit on our E&D side. And at some point, I'm going to have to absorb that into the Department of Revenue is going to come back and go, hey, you got to put that in your regular budget.
Why are we raising the fees?
We're going to have some conversation about that.
I mean, eventually, it's great to have all
The
of
premier
Yeah.
sports teams are raising their fees, I can
Yeah.
guarantee you that.
And we're
I'm
going to
sorry, but if it's under expended, it's kind of
Yeah.
like, duh, okay, guess we gotta raise it.
we're going to have some conversations around that, and it's that's a tough, but like
It's a nice thing to have,
Yeah.
but it's not a necessity to
to
have.
have, yeah,
English, reading, those kinds of things are important.
yeah.
Football, secondary.
Our
It's secondary. When it comes right down to it, the education process is certain things. Sports are a very nice
So
additional.
I've done some research, and we'll have discussions certainly about how to go about raising our fees to compare what other districts are charging and what would be reasonable to ask of parents. So, trust me.
Are we in line with other districts?
They're all over the place, to be honest with you. They really are.
Do you guys set those rates, or does that go through school committee?
The school committee, I
You'd have
think,
to
would
have
have to
approval from
approve,
school committee.
yes. So, it's a little project, I'm on it. But,
I get it. You had a lot of other things to do. Believe me, I understand.
I think the other thing we want to make sure is it's hard, like, I understand why schools have fees, districts have fees. I do worry about families or kids who can't afford the fees, and so the other thing we need to get better at is identifying those families and offering them support.
Yeah.
The last thing we want is some kid not to have an opportunity of other kids because they can't afford it.
Is there already that stuff in place, or?
Yeah, it's all right. It's lousy. Well, yes, but needs to be improved. And so one of the things that's hard is you can't identify kids the way you did. So you used to have an old system where you'd know if kids were free and reduced lunch, you'd have an application, and then you'd automatically know, oh, this is a child who may be eligible for like a sliding scale of some of these fees. Now everyone's, and what we get is you get directly certified folks, and so you might get kids who are on one side of that spectrum, but not the other. You're not capturing maybe families who are struggling, but maybe somebody's working, or and so it's not perfect, and I think we miss a lot, and we want to find a way to better support those families.
So the pupil service increase there, that $18,000 increase, and it looks like a big increase. We have AEDs, the defibrillators, all I didn't know if you knew that.
Thank you, I appreciate it, I did know that one.
All over
That
the
means where I know that one.
They need to be serviced on a regular basis. That was never included in the budget anywhere, and it's almost $14,000 to get them serviced every year. So that's where you see the bulk of that increase, and some nursing supplies. We were very minimally supplied in the nursing area, so that's basically the increase there. So the special ed tuitions, which is our biggest increase, we actually pay, or what we have budgeted to pay based on the kids that are out of district, because that's the one line that went up, it's $9.6 million. So we're budgeting a total of, and this includes a little bit of other special ed expenses that we pay to the state. But anyway, we are using, so we're budgeting 3.9 million, or actually 3.899 million is going to be budgeted through the general fund that you see here. We're using $1.5 million from our IDEA grant to cover that. We get about 1.89 million for the IDEA. That's an entitlement grant. That's the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act or something like that. And then the other 4.25 million is for our circuit breaker reimbursement. So our circuit breaker reimbursement for special ed costs has been, last year was 4.8 million, a little bit more than 4.8 million. It's a reimbursement program where they will reimburse 75% of the costs for special ed students, but the threshold that they start is $51,000. So the district pays the first $51,000, and then you get reimbursed 75% over that $51,000. That reimbursement program, most other school districts, you have, you can get the reimbursement, and then you have to use what you received in the subsequent year. So most school districts keep 1 year of circuit breaker in their back pocket because you're, and then you have to use it. But
you know the exact amount.
You know the exact amount you can budget it for. We're budgeting blind, and we're not leaving anything for emergencies. So it's like, I'm hoping little by little to catch up a little and get that 1 year previous, so we're in a better place to know, like, here's exactly what we're budgeted for, we got this, and then if we get some big out-of-district placements that are costly, we have we have some sitting there for us.
Sorry to interrupt, but I have a question. When they calculate district by district your minimum contribution, we know this district comes out valued as we can pay a lot of money. Do they conversely, for something like special ed circuit breaker, keep ours lower, or is that a flat rate across the state?
I believe it's flat.
Yeah, it's that calculation, that reimbursement process is like for the whole district, as well. So you I don't know how many special ed students there are in Rutland, but you could have a disproportionate share of students and be sharing the benefits of the reimbursement being part of a regional. So I don't know what the counts are by towns, to be honest with you. So
No, but I was
and I
thinking
wouldn't
more
want to
like,
look into that because people
we're not
could have some.
different from Worcester or Quabbin or.
No.
We are different in terms of some of the factors, in terms of how they build. Your Chapter 70 and your net school funding, it's different. It's much like, Bay Path's at net school funding because their reimbursement rate, or what they get per child from the state, is much higher than us.
Yeah.
You know, if you look, and I'm not trying to start a fight with Bay Path, but if you look at their budget, right, if we had the same rate as them from the state, we would be net school funding too. We'd have a budget of 150 million.
So if you ever looked at that Chapter 70 calculation, the foundation budget calculation, there's a column for vocational education students, and the rate that they get from the state for each of the vocational students is far greater, like, than the rate that we're getting. And ours says 0, you know, so you get increments.
We bring back shop at the middle school and the high school, can we get more money?
No, it is, that is the answer, though, in terms of what we're trying to do, in
Yeah.
terms of.
To keep those kids from going
That's
there.
exactly right. We're working
Yeah.
on the Pathways program and some things that, you know, because it is, like,
Yeah.
we should be asking ourselves, you know, why aren't some kids in, hey, school, we want every kid to have a hook, right? For some kids, it's football, for some, it's music, for some kids, it might be that they have an interest. We do have auto body, you know, they do some work in auto body and things, and we have an early childhood program. But we've gotten the grant, we got $75,000 this year to look into some other opportunities, and so
We
we're
have
gonna
a
continue to
business
do that.
program too. They have a business program too. I think when I was listening to the people, I didn't realize they applied to the school, because if there's one of our students sitting over there in the business program, you're paying a lot more for that student sitting over there in the business program. So I was surprised to hear, I thought they couldn't go out of district if the program was available in the school. Like, so they stated that as being one of their programs, so I
They
was
still
like.
have the option.
Yeah, but
How
it's
they
not,
get around that?
it's not out of district, that's the thing.
No, it's not out of district, you're
Not out of
right,
district.
like, so, but it would be too bad to think that they had,
Yeah, but nothing against the business program. Thing is what you don't offer, which they do offer, is the practical experience that
Yep.
unfortunately a normal high school doesn't. And
Yeah.
that's not a dig, it's just
Yeah.
No,
what,
it's-
the way
that's
it
the
is.
difference.
Honestly,
And I
the
think-
location model's good. There's a
Yeah.
lot
Yeah, I
of
mean,
benefits
and
of
there's
it.
reasons for it,
Yeah.
whether, you know.
but the state is funding them, and that's why they come in, they're at minimum. You gotta pay whatever they're saying, because the state telling you that's what you're paying, but they're funding them properly, or they're calculating them properly. So anyway, transportation, we talked about transportation. We had one, went out to bid. Our incumbent came back as the only bidder. And the first year is over an 11% increase, which includes a performance bond that was not budgeted for previously as part of the bid and the contract. The district does pay the performance bond. So that was added. The following 2 years, as Jim said, will be a 5.5% increase. Their increase was higher than ours. I'm actually, in going to the business officials, I actually have pretty much the lowest increase in transportation costs that I've heard so far. And some smaller school districts like Hudson, their increase, they're ending, like, it costs definitely a lot more to transport a kid through 155 square miles than it does in Hudson, in their little town, and they're ending at the same rates that we're ending at. So they got hit with like a 27% increase, and then have like a 9 and a 9% increase or something like that, a 7 and 7, to end at the same rates that we're at. So I did look at some rates to make sure that it's reasonable. And I think there's an unspoken rule with transportation too. These organizations don't go into someone else's space. So that's why you get the same, you're getting the same person, or the same organization who's transporting your students for you. And you don't get other people bidding. I based the special ed in-district and out-of-district transportation. I looked at what exactly the costs were going to be for the last 2 years and gave them the same 11% increase. We are under contract with a couple. We actually, I think, have 4 or 5 special ed contracts. 2 of them are expiring at the end of this year, the other 3 at the end of next year. So we seek a lot of different services to get our special ed transportation. And then our debt service, some debt came off the books, 1.4 million almost came off the books. So you're seeing a reduction there with an overall increase to our budget of 4.97%.
So
we go back to the operations and maintenance line real quick.
Mm-hmm.
You had said that a big portion of that's from the generator.
So 150 from the generator, and then we've put in 350 for the high school project, so it's intercoms, phones, and clock systems that they're looking
Auditorium.
at, and then there's a new sound system for the auditorium. We've gotten quotes, I'll send those to you tomorrow.
Is that
too.
the cost or is that the depreciated cost?
You know what? We put 350,000 in the budget. We have a few of these projects, the quotes that we have exceed that 350,000, so we're gonna be picking and choosing what we're actually gonna get done.
So do those get capitalized or is that the total cost?
That's the question.
Oh,
So
no,
this-
it'll be the cost. We're not,
So you don't capitalize those improvements?
you mean, spread them out over the,
Yeah, you don't.
like to borrow for them?
You don't.
Like
ca-
amortization.
Amortization, right, you don't capitalize anything.
No.
Okay.
The only way you would do that is if you borrowed. Like if you pay for it, you pay for it.
Yeah, we
Will they depreciate? Like that, yes. Will the auditors look at them as a capital asset and then they'll take some, depreciation on that?
Never knew that.
But, it's pretty much a cash basis business we're running unless we go out to borrow. And borrowing for us, we have to have all 5 towns approve. Or if we wanted to do
Easier to
any
pay
type of
cash.
exclusion,
Yeah.
you have to get all 5 towns to approve. So
We'll have a
if
slide
you
for you a
need
little
something,
later. I mean,
yeah, if you need something
we
done.
Try to look at our
Question,
how to
what-
work with the town, so you could even have debt exclusions if you wanted to on some of the projects.
Yeah.
I think our concern is if we went out to all 5 towns for something like this and it didn't get approved,
It's done.
especially in intercom, it makes us real nervous, and that's why we built, in the generator, that's why we built it into the budget this year.
What came off the books for 1.4 on your debt
So
service?
last year, our increase was 6.56%, if you recall, our overall increase. Oh, you mean what
The
came
debt.
off the
He's saying the
books?
debt.
Oh, it was the high school building project,
Oh,
20 years ago.
okay. And that was
It
your
was a
last
20.
payment?
Yep.
And I think at one point it had been refinanced, but that came to an end.
Yeah, so it actually got refinanced, and so I don't think it's fully off the books yet. It got refinanced into a few different bonds, so.
When I look at this, I understand general accounting principles, that debt service is part of your cash flow, so to speak, in a budget. What I have a problem with when I look at these things is debt service should be after, so that we get a realistic picture of what your expenses are for the services to run, not the debt service. So now when you look at what your general fund operating costs, and now we deduct the debt service after that to arrive at a realistic picture, because taking 1.4 million off the difference does make about a 1% difference in that 4.97. So you're looking at about a 6% change in operating expenses once you take the debt off. So I have no problem with the debt, it's just, I have a problem with the way it's
How it's perceived.
how it's presented.
Yeah, we don't pick. These are the appropriations that are established by the buckets by the state, right?
It's no, a lot of people do their budget according to DESI function codes, so.
That's what I mean,
This
so
is,
it's
this
like-
has just been a practice, I believe
just the
this.
district passes?
Yeah, I think that it's actually codified somewhere in policy or regional agreement or so. These appropriations were set up prior to me being here.
My
It's
friend
one of the
mine,
things in
No,
some.
I understand, that's why we put them in red, you know what I mean? That's why we call it out, because we just don't want,
Yeah.
we're not trying to hide
So,
anything.
so like, and again, I'm not quite there yet, but maybe in a couple of years, you may see some different, and to go through the process of budgeting through DESI function codes, so you can see the real costs and breaking them down in such a way, because DESI does not, transportation and debt service are not part of net school spending. So, and you saw that in the last presentation, they broke it out. So this is just a practice that's been in place that I agree with you.
understand. So to look at this now, 1.4 million came off, so that reduction is going to happen again next year. Part of that 862 is going to be less for 26, less for 27.
Yeah.
And so there's no plans for major expenditures to debt service, is what I'm hearing going forward.
Nope, not at this point, we're not quite there yet, that's for sure.
But you guys floated across the bow that you were thinking about replacing we need another school in Rutland in a few years.
Yeah.
Is that still your thought?
So we're looking at a couple of different things, and so I don't want to get a lot of good questions. So I'm going to hit a couple things for you. One thing in terms of, there's a question about debt and things we're looking for in terms of potential capital improvements. We meet with the town managers on a monthly basis. One of the things we talked about was this debt coming off the books, and what would the manager's preference be? What would we potentially want to look into? Would we want to take on some debt to pay for some of these projects? And it got complex quick, and I'll be honest with you, we're not at the point where we can identify all those projects and have a reliable stream where like, hey, this is our replacement plan, this is how long we would want to go out for. We weren't sure what our rate would be, just because we had some reporting issues the last couple of years. And so we ended up saying, well, we're not ready for that, because the advantage of that is you can get the debt exclusion, and then so you have a different revenue source, and it's independent of your, your tax base and all those other things. And we understand that's an advantage to the town. We'd love to try to partner and do some of that work. So we moved on from that, and then we looked at getting a stabilization account, which we think we still will put forward to the towns and ask the school committee to vote for. What that would do for us is it allow us to have a fund, and say we're getting a little bit high in excess and deficiency, say to the towns, ask school committee, can we put $1 million in this to do some projects? Then, we share that, hey, we're gonna do this project, and, for the high school, this is where the money is, it's in the stabilization account, so it's not gonna hit your assessment, but we're gonna be able to fund it through this and do it that way. It wouldn't give you the debt exclusion, but it'd be a way of managing E&D and not hitting the towns if you had an extraordinary expense. And so we'd still like to pursue that in terms of establishing the fund, but we're not in the point where we have a funding source to get that stabilization thing. And then we ended up where we are now, where we just said, all right, what are the absolute essential projects for us to do? And we built them into the budget, but I think we'd all admit it's not the best long-term solution for the towns or for the district. You get a capital plan in your packet, and I think we feel good about the projects on it, but all the costs aren't true. Some of them are based on actual quotes, but a lot of them are estimates. And so we know that's not as tight as we want it to be, but one of the things is, and Austin's great about this, is we walk the buildings. Brett's on our facilities committee, and so go around, walk the buildings with the town administrators, look at it and say, hey, what do you think? And that's how we start to try to develop this and partner up and do what we can to hit things as they move along. So we're getting better about identifying, because it was not a strength. And honestly, Mark Wild's the guy who does all the work for us and is setting that tone for us. And he's really gotten us to a good place in terms of knowing our facilities, getting on us about making sure we're doing the maintenance. But we still get I would say that's not a document to the level that we want it to be at, and mostly around the cost. We think the projects, in terms of us earmarking when things we'd like for them to be done, is good. And then eventually, we're gonna, want to get to the point where the benefit for the town is if you get some of these buildings that reach a certain age, we can be, town can be eligible for accelerated repair. And that would allow us, you guys, to get a much better rate in terms of investment on roofs and windows, and then they're working on the boilers. They took that off the list more recently because they're trying to move away. They don't know if they're going to commit into different technology, so they want to move away from fossil fuels, so they put a pause on that. And so I don't know what they're going to do with that piece, but this year they're not making things eligible. But the other thing that's happened, and it's because of the school committee, subcommittee, it was like one of the first things they said to me when I came on, is we have a much better record of when things are aging out, when they're going to be eligible, and try to put that in place too, because that will be important. And then similarly, we're going to try to do that, we'd certainly be willing to apply if there was need on a particular building, or the decision was you want to expand a building. And the work we're doing around that is we started what we call a Facilities and Town Growth Task Force. And so one of the things we kind of became more aware of in the spring was, the potential here in Rutland and also in Holden, that there's going to be some growth and that there are some permits out there, and you really could be, there could be some building that's going to be taking place over the next decade. And trying to get a better sense of what does that look like. And so we're prepared with the town of Rutland as far as looking at when might there be an issue in terms of capacity in schools, and, what would we want to talk about as a solution. We're trying to look at district solutions too, because it's interesting, right? We got Rutland and Holden that are traditional towns, and you have traditional structures of your schools, and then we get Sterling, Paxton, and Princeton, and, they're basically all K-8s, Sterling's, divided into Houghton and Wachusett, but it's all one physical plant. And they're dealing with different population issues. And so we're really trying to look at that work, because it's what makes the district a little bit unique. Like, we'd love to try to find some options. So, say it's not going to be an explosion in Rutland, but is there a way to, my dream would be we would find a way to do town-to-town transportation if you had some Rutland residents who are like, hey, I'd like to go to this school or whatever. And, we even talk about what those schools could look like. Maybe they have specialized programs where, they offer something like Thomas Prince does a lot of STEM work. And so for a lot of the parents, they like that. And some parents may like going to a K-8 school. And what could we do, where if I'm in Rutland, I don't have to drive my kid every day if I want to go to Thomas Prince, right? And so that's more attractive to me, and then it also helps out Rutland, because, you don't have the 15, 20 students every year, and it gets to the point where you need to build another school if you didn't have to, or at least it would slow down the need for that, so you had some control over the planning if that was an option that you were going to pursue. And so that's a lot of the things that we're trying to look into. We just got the draft of that study back, and we're going to meet with them, I think, next Thursday, just to review it with them and then put it back for a final report. And so we're going to make that available. We've done that. What that committee's looked like is it was folks on our facilities committee, and then we also invited town partners. Austin's a part of it, usually somebody else from the town who they wanted to invite. And then we're actually kind of an exciting piece of it. The people who did it for us, which was Central Mass Regional Planning Commission, they wrote a grant, and so hopefully we're going to have funded phase 2 and phase 3 of that study. And we're not, the district paid for the initial phase, I think it was around $10,000, $12,000, and to really get the sense of the population. But these next phases hopefully are going to be funded by the grants. And that's going to be good, because it's not going to be just about school-town partnerships. It's also going to look to establish some opportunities for the towns, the 5 towns, to partner resources and look at things together. So hopefully it gives, Rutland and the other towns an opportunity to say, hey, maybe we would think about there's some efficiencies here about some of our other services as well. So that's the work we're doing, and try to get a hold on that, because it's pretty complex and it's hard. We get estimates about what our class sizes are going to look like, but they're not great. You know what I mean? And not really on real data, what they were trying to do with the study.
So you're thinking you'll have some, where I'm going with this is over the next couple of years, Rutland's gonna be faced with some major capital expenses, buildings, and I'm just trying to think about, in the big picture, is a school one of them? So are you thinking a year or two, you're gonna tell me that?
I'm thinking that I'm going to share the study when they say I can share the study, and I think we'll know what the population growth is. And I think when we get back the study, we're probably going to, meet, and Austin's going to look at it, and he's going to say, hey, what we want to be with you is partners. And what we want to do is get the best data. Like, the reason why we did this task force is because we didn't want to do a study that the towns then looked at and said, well, that's a great study, but we don't believe in the way you went about it. Okay. Or we don't, you know what I mean? So we tried to do it together, so everyone's like, yeah, we trust, Central Mass, and sure, let's ask him for this. I've only looked at it real quickly, to be honest with you. It's still not as tight as I'd love it to be, because there's still some unknowns. You might have permits, but it's hard to predict what's going to be the timing that people execute it. And so, but I think it's probably going to be better than what we've had before. We're decent.
Are they going to do a space study too?
Yeah, and so
Yeah, so
phase
that
2
was
and
phase
3, we're
2.
going to actually be looking at buildings and having an individual assessment, like where does this, link? Because some of the decisions are like, and these are town decisions, they're your buildings, and, we want to, like I said, partner with you as much as you want us to do, and we can talk about it. But, I don't know, do you have a building where you could put an addition on it? Or would you want to look at a restructuring? Does it make sense? that Naquag's not catered to anymore, which Christine will get mad at me for even saying. You have some room at Glenwood, you know what I mean? So there's opportunities for us to look at that, but what we're really trying to get hard for you is the data so we can answer those questions. And then the other work we're doing, that's why I shared kind of like what we might do with Thomas Prince and some of these other schools. We gotta get them at a level where they're more full, And so that's an important piece of it too, I mean, get Sherry in back, and Sherry called this out when we were sharing the class size reports. Some of the schools have much lower class sizes than you. And she used Central Tree as an example. That's not right. That's not right. And so we gotta try to find a way to address that.
Over the next couple of years at, like Naquag, for instance, our oldest school in town, we're spending a fair amount of money. So I'm just saying, are we just pouring money down the drain there, or you guys in this plan that you guys got, hopefully comes out in the next, sooner than later, so we can kind of plan ahead, right? Because I think, and you guys are I think with this study, you're gonna be able to say, well, maybe we shouldn't do this, we should do that.
That's exactly right.
What we're looking
That's
for.
exactly what we're hoping for.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we're hoping
Yeah,
for.
and then
There's nobody in the room here that doesn't, I think it's unrealistic to think that we're gonna go a bunch of years without replacing a school or rebuilding a school or making another school in this town. So I think we just, in the big scheme of things, we need to know that. That's all.
Yep, no, I'm
I
right with you. That's why we did this, right with you.
And the district has to put in a statement of interest with the MSBA. So we would have to partner with you, to say, hey, this is what we found. Are you ready for us to do this? Because ultimately, it's the dollars on you guys, and you've got to pass that debt through the town.
It's coming. It's
So-
either sooner or later.
Yeah.
It's coming. We know it's coming, right? I mean, we'd be putting our head in the sand if we didn't think we're gonna get a new school. But I just.
No, it's a great question.
Or at least need one.
Or at least need one, right? It's either, is it 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? We're just trying to.
No, it's a great
That's our
question.
job to
and
try to
yeah,
plan ahead.
No, and I think that's why we wanted to do the task force. And I like to think I have a
We
good
support you.
relationship with Austin. He hasn't talked to me in 2.5 weeks since we gave him their first assessment numbers. I think we'll get back there at some point. But no, you got a great person here in town, and I think
Because he got it from us right after he told us. He didn't he probably, yeah.
Yeah.
It's been a full circle.
Yeah.
Communities.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm happy to. The other thing that we joined was, thank you very much, your green communities. And we didn't, I'll be honest with you, we hadn't realized that before. And Princeton had approached us because they said, do you want to be part of this? So the school district is now, we have to pass a final policy, but we're going to be a green communities district in terms of a school district. And what that means is, in Rutland and in Princeton, if you want to put some of those funds or some of those grant funds towards your schools, you're going to be eligible for those programs too, which is a great opportunity. And so that's something that Austin and then Sherry Patch and Princeton both pursued. And I applaud them for it. It's going to be one more resource that you're going to have available to you.
We're gonna need them all.
Do you guys get solar power from the panels on Glenwood and other schools?
I don't know how it works, to be honest with you. I thought it went to the town, but I don't know.
I think the town
That's
gets the
something
credits.
we're looking at the contracts, because I brought up a couple times, the roof repair or replacements for the schools are in, and I'm pretty sure that when we had the solars installed, it was an agreement with the solar companies that they would either replace or repair the roofs to get the 20 years out of the panels, and it definitely hasn't been 20 years. So Austin and I were just talking about going back and looking at those contracts to see. I do remember through that whole negotiation process, because Rutland is the only town that's not on municipal electricity, that it was a lot of back and forth with the district as far as how, if it was allowable, if the district was amenable to it, how it would be either taken off of our assessment or goes to the school or goes to the town or whatever. So Austin and I are gonna dig around and see what we can find.
Yeah, sounds good. I'll be honest, I apologize. I don't know a bunch about it. I guess the way I look at it, they're your buildings.
Yeah, and I think the struggle we had is a lot of it, it started before COVID, but then kind of happened over COVID, and then coming out of COVID, there was a pressure to get stuff done to meet the grant timelines and everything, so we'll see what we can find.
In the, that is one of the projects that we've identified. Central Tree Roof is one that we.
But like I said, I'm pretty sure that through those solar negotiations, that they were supposed to either replace or repair the roof to get the 20 years out of the panels.
May have been,
Yeah, no, and it could be a great solution. Yeah, and I didn't mean it as a complaint. I'm saying, yeah, that's definitely.
No, I don't know enough either, so.
Jim, I think school committee did finish passing the green communities.
Okay, thank you.
I think it's done.
Hey, I didn't, I just couldn't remember about the vehicle policy.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you want me to continue? Do you want me to continue? Yeah. So this is just our breakdown of revenues coming in. You can see Chapter 70, we're only getting an extra $202,000. Our Chapter 71, which is our transportation reimbursement, so we get reimbursed as a regional transportation for regular ed transportation students who travel more, or they come more than a mile and a half distance from the school. Right now, this rate, the 2.9 million that is set by the governor's budget is an 80% reimbursement rate of that cost. So, and we have not gotten our FY '24 yet. I think we're getting 2.5 million back in reimbursement, but that has not been released at this time. The charter tuition aid, you can see, just decreased slightly. Then we have Medicaid reimbursements that we get. We budgeted the same $750,000 last year that we did last year. Right now, our reimbursement that we're expecting for this year is $812,000, which a possibility of some additional cost analysis that they did that we might get. So we're leaving that as is. Interest, we increased a great deal. Interest rates have increased a great deal. We don't know what's going to happen come election time, whether or not those interest rates will hold. So increase that to $275,000. And then the miscellaneous revenue that we get there is we do some bill backs to towns for out-of-district special ed students that they share a portion of the cost of their transportation. So we try to bill for them and get that money back. It's not necessarily a sure thing, but we do the best we can. And most years we're getting between 200 and 300,000. I think last year we got 285,000 back. Right now we haven't collected a great deal, and we are not using excess and deficiency this year as a revenue source for the budget. So your town assessments, if you have the old presentation from
The first one.
the first one, February 29th, there was an error in I was taking last year's calculations for, I think it was discretionary and something else. I was using this year's numbers for calculations. So in fixing that, your increase is 7.76% this year compared to last year. And
Yeah.
do you want me to talk about?
It's up to you. Do you want me to
Yes.
talk about net school spending and actual spending and the difference? And so I won't do that. I'm happy
It
to.
doesn't matter to me, it's up to the group.
I don't
Yeah.
think it would make
Yeah.
a difference at this
So
point.
basically, it was just, most districts spend way more than is required for net school spending. We spend, what was it?
This is in FY '23, because that's when we have
Yeah.
the state.
Yeah, that's when we had actual numbers to go by. So we're 25% over net school spending. And there's probably actually, I think it was like a dozen districts that don't meet net school spending, or are operating at net school spending,
I'd say
so.
most of them are large urbans or vocational schools, and it's mostly because the state formula for their funding and their populations gets them a much higher net school funding rate. I'm just going to share quickly, and as I said before, Austin's a great partner. If you ask us in terms of things we're hoping for eventually in the Rutland buildings, it is security improvements. We did, just so you all know, We applied for a $50,000 grant last year for Central Tree. We didn't get it. I wish we did. We will continue to do that because we want to support you in any way we can. The other thing I just want to share is we are putting money into the schools sometimes, and you don't always hear it. And so because there's free lunch now, we have a much more healthy food services account. And one of the things you do with that is you put investments back into your schools. And so the other thing we do is, just so you know, is it reduces our salary costs. So we pay our food service workers, we pay for their insurance, we pay for their salaries out of that fund. And so there's a little bit of a savings there. But by the end of this year, some of this stuff has already happened. Glenwood got 2 double-stack convection ovens. That was about $22,000. And we're in line for about a $100,000 investment in Naquag. And so they did some stuff where they did a new storage room, and there was some asbestos remediation and other things that they got done, which was great. But they're also due to get a walk-in freezer, a conveyor dishwasher, which I guess is like $50,000, and then they're going to replace the serving line. And I just share that. The district should do that. I just wanted to share that we are doing that, and so we are trying to put back into the schools when we can as well.
Security upgrades. That has been an issue for me for a long time in the schools.
Yeah.
And I know that David and I have tried to work on that some years ago. At what point are we at securing our schools from a safety standpoint?
Yeah, and so I think we have the quotes in your packet. One of the things we're recommending, and so the big issues we see, and the other thing we do, although we've fallen off our pace a little bit this year, is we do meet with police and fire chiefs, typically on a monthly basis, although we've only had a couple meetings this year. And so that was one of the things when we walked around the buildings with Brett and the other folks is, we were looking at some of the schools and we said, wow, this is concerning, right? And so I think the big items we've identified is the cameras where you may buzz in, where they're facing, a line of sight. I'll say, Glenwood in particular. I always make some crack about, it looks like from the Jetsons or whatever. It's not clean, it's not clear, and so that's something that I think we want to make sure we have updated at all our schools. We also typically don't have camera coverage to the level I think we'd like. And then the other thing is a lot of the schools are key dependent, and so they don't have necessarily fobs. And so the challenge in that is if you've had keys and locks for a long time, people make copies. People don't give their keys back. And so you don't, at that point of entry, you don't have the level of security you want. Where if you're able to go to a system that has fobs, right, instantaneously, if there's an issue where you have an employee issue or something like that, you can stop access immediately, and then you also can update. I'd love to get to a point where we have ID systems, because you can also use fobs with a system like that, but that's a few things away. What you'll see in your quotes is cameras, making sure the point of entries are what they need to be in terms of egress into the buildings, fobs, and fob usually on 1 or 2. It depends. It's pretty school specific. Mark Wild led some of the work. I think Austin has been part of it, and they've walked around. And they also the school principals. And so what they need, Dave will tell you. For him, probably the biggest advantage would be the cameras. Because it's not just security and emergency and having kids come in and out, but if he has an incident that he needs to investigate and make sure there isn't a security risk, if he has cameras that he can look at and be reliable, it makes a difference for him too. So those are the big 3.
So at what point are we? Are we 10% in the process of getting them secure, 15, 20?
Just remember, the proposed capital budget for the town for this year includes the security systems for all
stuff, right.
3 schools, for all 3 schools, and the ADA improvement for the playground behind Glenwood.
That's awesome.
Right, okay, so
And I'll be honest with you.
that's more up to us then.
Yeah,
okay.
and so that's wonderful, and I'll be honest with you, and like right now, we have them in 3 of the towns, but we don't have them in Holden yet either, so. And then, like I said, honestly, I respect Austin a lot, and I know he's been trying to work on all these things. I think what we're trying to do is give you a better list, let you know what's happening in the buildings, have those conversations, and then when we can, if we can get a grant that's going to get the work done for you, apply for them. And, I was bummed out last year that we didn't get it.
So I guess his question is that are the schools, by the time the kids go back to school next year, gonna be squared away.
So if it gets passed, yeah, we'll move on as quick as we can. I think
Town meeting.
I'm saying if we pass it at town meeting, we're not gonna wait a full year. We're gonna do it as quickly as we can.
Yeah, if you have the funds appropriated, we'd work with you if that's the vendor you select and want to do. I would say that it's been a little bit delayed. The two schools that passed it last year were Thomas Prince in Princeton and then also Houghton Wachusett. In Sterling, they're getting theirs put in, I think, this next vacation, so it's been a little delayed for them, but I do feel like we could probably, hopefully, at least on our end, speed up the timeline for you. That would be our goal in terms of if you wanted them in, that we would work with you to try to get that done.
I think the town will, like, I don't know Austin, but the town will probably take over the procurement of, yeah. And so that it would just be like if he reaches out to us and Mark, you need some help or some guidance or whatever.
Michelle, I got a couple of questions on the budget. What is the ACA ESRP penalty?
That is, so it's the Affordable Care Act penalty if you have people who are getting premium assistance or getting assistance from the state. We've offered them insurance, but the insurance is not considered affordable to them. So we have some positions like our paraprofessionals or our lower paid positions that if they're able to get that assistance, we get a penalty because they're not taking our insurance. More than happy to take the penalty, people. It's a whole lot more expensive than insuring them.
To understand what it was.
Yeah.
And then contracted services, what kinds of things go under contracted services?
So anytime you don't have like an employee in the district who they're offering some services.
So it
like,
can
so-
be actual teacher kind of stuff, or is
It
it
could,
like?
well, it could be a bunch
You
of.
have some
different-
nurses under it, and so sometimes
No,
if it, right?
They're in like every single line. So for example, we hire someone come in to do some PD, some professional development, or it could be a special ed like student that we have to do an evaluation that we don't have someone in district to do an evaluation. They're in all different areas. You'll see them in instructional areas. So anytime we're getting a service that's provided by not an employee within the district.
Network and telecom went up quite significantly. What are we getting for that?
How much was that?
26.9
$26,900.
increase.
I have to look into that. I feel like that's where I was missing something and I grabbed it. I think it was like our security oversight and there was something else. I'll look into that for you.
That's fine. And then you have some stuff here for legal settlements. I don't need to know specifically, but what kind of things are going to legal settlements?
So that, like, and we actually, some of that, I don't know what's gonna happen, but there's a couple. We have some legal settlements that we have for special ed students that we buy some small items and things that are under a legal agreement. But we've also, when we settle a legal, when we are making an actual settlement, like say, I can't say them because it's
No,
not
don't, yeah,
anybody's
that's
business.
fine. And that's what I'm saying. I just needed to understand that that was truly what they were.
Yeah.
Yep. And the total new textbooks, that's that English?
The curriculum, yeah, the curriculum materials.
Could we refer to that as a state mandate in some sense?
What's that?
Basically forcing us to purchase certain curriculums?
So there's some talk of a legislation that they are going to pass in the next year. And there could have been some funding associated with that. They came out with this year. You know, one of the things I think that's been frustrating for us in terms of revenue sources is grants. And so we're getting grants, but we're not getting grants that are necessarily helpful to our budget sometimes. And so where we've done a nice job, we got a $150,000 SEL grant that's going to help us in terms of supplying some of those services in the curriculum for SEL. We do have a $75,000 pathway grant, which is going to look at some of those programs like we talked about that may be attracted to more kids and giving them a different experience in district. We got a huge grant for $400,000 plus. That was for our Math Acceleration Academy. So Schools were open in both February, and they will be again in April for kids who may want to come to school 4 days a week. They come, they get meals. They've actually, a lot of kids liked it. And so they got that through the state. What's hard about all those things, love the math acceleration. We actually got the biggest award in the entire state. But if you asked us if we could have gotten $400,000 to put towards our textbooks, that's what we would have done. And so we applied for a textbook grant, and we didn't get it. And, you know, the reason why we were told we didn't get it is because we had gotten grants for textbooks the previous 2 years. And so we had paid for our Amplify, or ELA curriculum at middle school, and then our math program there too. And so that's been a frustration. Like, and I would have told you that grant and the security grant that we put in for Central Tree, we put in one for the 3 middle schools in Sterling, Rutland, and Holden, 50 grand each. That was the max. I would have thought we would have gotten that, no problem. And so we're going to keep on plugging away. I think we have to keep on thinking about what's our process, but that has been a frustration. I don't think, because they haven't passed that legislation yet, to answer your question, I don't think we could do it, although they're kind of heading that way, where if they pass that, that's really what it would be. I know, you know, just so we mentioned school choice, school committee had me open the conversation at the meeting we had on Tuesday, Monday? Thank you. Losing track here. And gave them a kind of primer on some of those things. They gave me some questions. We're actually developing that to share with them and look at that. School choice would give us about $5,000 a student. You don't get credit for them on your enrollment, and you don't get the proportion that you would if they were actually attending the district. What happens is their home district makes a payment to you of $5,000. We would start getting that money next year. It'd arrive, I think Michelle was telling me, mid-year around December. And so we're looking at it, and we need to be asking questions like that.
Are there scenarios where you can lose money on a student that choices in?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and that's really the questions that school committee started to ask. Well, and I think where I would say this is, I think we probably have spaces, particularly at the high school, where we could have, like, our class sizes are small enough where you could have students. And this was the point that was brought up. You know, we don't have a lot of guidance services. And so where you wouldn't necessarily lose money, you may be impacting limited resources to other kids. And so, you know, we wouldn't lose money. So, and this is one of the things we're getting an answer for school committee, and they asked it. And so even if a child becomes eligible for like an out-of-district placement or other things, there are some things that the state puts in place where we're not responsible for those costs. So I don't think we would lose money on things like that, but where you might lose resources, not money, if that makes sense. And so you know, if you don't know what the particular level of need is for a particular child.
Stretching your current services too thin.
And so that's the thing you have to be careful about. And that was raised by school committee, and I think it's a valid point. And so we're going to do our best to give them some real clean information as much as we can. And like I said, the other thing we're going to make sure we're doing is we're going through a process right now where we really are looking at all our positions and making sure we absolutely have our money in the right spot, you know, because I don't want to say this to you, but I feel like I need to say it. There are things that we want to add. We really do. Like, I worry in particular about our elementary students and our ability to support them. I have to wonder sometimes when I look at special education, if we were able to intervene in a different way for those kids at a younger age, could that have been a different story? And we don't have some of those positions that, you know, you do have in some other spots. We talked about the capital improvements. They're in the budget right now. We talked about some of the options you can look at. I'm doing this slide, and I just want you to know, we got to this point in the budget because we really are at a point. If we do anything else in this budget, it's going to hit people. And I just wanted to give you a sense, because we have done the math and we've tried to do some of that work. And so when you do personnel reductions, what you typically do in education is you do kind of a 2/3 principle. And what I mean about that is you typically cut 3 people to get the savings of 2. And you do that because of unemployment and other obligations that you'd have if you made those reductions. What we did is we looked at employees who would have 1 to 3 years experience. Most of our contracts would prohibit us from cutting staff who had professional status. And so those are the people we would be obligated to cut. And so we used those salary estimates when we did these projections. And then the last thing we did is we looked at our average benefits package. And so we have about 80% of our employees who take health benefits, and a percentage of them do individual, and then a percentage to family, and we looked at what that cross-section is, and we came up with some estimates. Basically, for every teacher that we remove from our staff, we'd save about $50,000 approximately. If we removed a paraprofessional, it'd be about $22,500. And so what that works out to is every $500,000 we took off this budget, it'd be about 10 teachers or 22 paraprofessionals. We were desperately trying to avoid that. We really are in a position where I feel like we need every teacher that we have, and it would really hurt us if we went there.
That was my question is, where do you consider the Wachusett community in terms of staffing level? Are you at 80%, 70? Oh, that's where you were
He's
going?
going right into it.
It's good. It's making me feel good about some of the stuff we did. And so these are our ratios, and please know I'm not doing this to guilt, I'm not saying, oh, look at us and all that. What this is it compares us to our DART peers. DART peers are districts that we're grouped with, and, that's similar, that we have similar needs, similar situations, that we're in similar context, and they're the folks that the district, that the state compares us to in terms of academic performance and other things. For us right now, for administrators, for every 100 students, we have a 0.6 administrator. We're one of the lowest, but there are a few others that are 0.7. For our teaching staff, we're at a 7.2. I'd say again, near the bottom, but we're not terribly out of alignment. Melrose is smaller than us. We're right around Shrewsbury. And so it's one of the reasons why I said I get really concerned if we looked at teachers. And then we're a little bit higher for paraprofessionals. I think I'd have to find you more information in terms of paraprofessionals and what's in that grouping. It's possible ABAs are in that grouping as well, which might explain why it's a little bit higher in the district.
Want to tell us what an ABA is?
Yes.
Sorry.
I love this. Yeah, the CBAs are the ones who tell the ABAs what to do. They're applied behavior analysts.
Thank you.
Yeah, you got it. Sorry, I did it to you again. It is, these are some of the positions that we look at, and we ask ourselves when people go through attrition, is this the position we need, or do we need, and Dave's a good example of this. Dave wanted to do co-teaching at Central Tree. And so, again, he's like, this is the model, this is going to be better for kids. And so, basically, if you have a few paraprovisions that you don't need to replace and you want to advocate for a teacher, we are looking at those scenarios sometimes in the effort of making it better for kids. And again, I always have to say this, I'm not anti-paraprofessional. They're some of the most wonderful people we employ, and they make a difference for kids. I think we just always have to ask ourselves who we're hiring, why, and what's going to have the biggest impact on kids.
What is DART?
So,
Does that have
I want to
is that an
say
acronym
district,
or something?
yeah, it has to be. I don't know that
The
one.
reason I'm asking is I look at, what's that?
Government, it's gotta have abbreviations.
Yeah, I'm looking at some of these things and I'm thinking, okay, Milton itself, Wachusett Regional is as large as the Milton school system itself.
No, it's,
That's why I'm trying to
Yeah,
figure
we're
out what the
25th
comparison
largest.
is here.
Yeah, I mean, I can send that to you too. It's interesting.
No,
But it's a good question.
I'm sure
My brain doesn't need that
You
one.
can kind of look at,
Comparing
just look at the
towns,
blue
like
bar
levels of
compared to the state
education,
average.
It's gotta be comparable.
So the blue bar is the state
Analysis
average.
review tools.
Oh,
Yeah.
is that what it stands for?
Support staff, some of that's about our counselors. We always want to try to, we want to get you to 1.0 in all of your schools. And so that's it. And then clerical staff, I think we're at 0.6 for clerical staff. That's in line with a lot of places. And then technology staff. These are just, the reason why we picked these areas is that's what
That's what they
DESI puts out there.
provided.
We didn't cherry pick any of these or anything like that.
It's district analysis review tools.
Thank you. Thank you. And so this is just their schedule. We know, your schedule for your town meeting on May 11th. Like we said, we're happy to provide you. It sounds like we have a couple of things to follow up with you, in terms of additional information. I don't know if you're going to have more requests. We're always, I'm always at those town meetings. If you felt it would be happy, if you felt it would be helpful to have a presentation, or I'm always available to answer questions, but I'd be happy to make a presentation. I know last year, when you were in a situation, I was happy to come to the library and talk to some of those groups. I hope from what we've shared with you tonight, that we are taking this seriously and we are trying to take our responsibility seriously. And we really do want to be decent partners with you. And so if there's anything we can do to help support the town in this process, because I know you're going through a lot too, we certainly are more than willing to do it. So, appreciate it.
Just as a follow-up, I know at school committee on Tuesday night, the school committee voted to send a letter on behalf of the district advocating to the state for more funding, and I'm proposing that I would like to see our select board and FinCom, as well as the select boards and FinComs from all 5 member towns, do something similar to advocate for increase in Chapter 70 funding, which is really what is really hurting us the most this year. I know the MMA, the Mass Municipal Association, has put a letter out to the legislature, and I think the MASC, the Massachusetts Association of School Committees, testified in front of the Joint Committee of Ways and Means. So there's a lot of traction to do so, and so that was one of the agenda items, I think, for both Select Board and FinCom tonight, was to hopefully come around support in each board individually submitting a similar letter in support of increased funding. The MMA has outlined not only Chapter 70, they are looking for regional transportation fully funding, some of the special ed and circuit breaker stuff as well. But I think the school committee motion was specifically around Chapter 70. So that's one of the things I would love to see kind of Rutland do. It would help us immensely, and I think it would help all the member towns, as well as the 200 and...
Is there a letter already written?
We can draft one.
Okay.
Just kind of...
Monday night?
Yeah, yep.
Okay.
And then sign it, but I just wanted to kind of put it out there, as I would love to see the similar support from some of the communities as well.
Yeah.
Do you need a motion?
I don't think
We
so.
would do that, no?
No, I think we would just sign yours as well, right?
Well, I'd kind of like 2 separate letters.
Oh, okay. I don't
I
think we
think
need a
I think that there's value to having more letters going in from different parts of the organization.
Bigger the larger number of letters, the bigger the noise it makes.
larger number, the more trees.
Snowflakes are nothing, it's a storm that.
There you go, that's the thing.
But there, to that point, Harry, there was an article in the TNG, I think on Monday morning, about the kind of educational cliff that this funding formula has. The Boston Globe had an article, I think, Tuesday or Wednesday, similar echoing, because it's hitting, it's decimating the states.
Yeah.
And it's really throwing the burden on the local communities, the local municipalities. So this year is especially bad. I think there's traction there then to kind of reevaluate the education funding as an entirety for the larger communities, but not city side, like.
Sounds cool. Do we need a motion to adjourn?
Well, I don't know if there's other conversation
there
or
other-
discussion for the questions or anything for.
Is there anything else? That's good.
Thank you very much for coming.
But I thought we
Thank you.
also.
Thank you.
Yeah, good job.
We're the quorum.
Thank you.
I take a motion to adjourn.
I didn't know.
We
Thank you,
haven't
guys.
done our minutes.
Yeah, we have to do minutes.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
very
Appreciate
much.
it. Thank you all.
The selectmen can certainly get out of here.
Teachers helping you
I'll
support
take
staff.
a motion to adjourn.
Teachers
I'll make a
helping
motion to
you
adjourn.
support
We have a motion, is
staff.
there a second? Second.
Okay,
We have
because
a
when I was
second.
teaching,
Roll call.
it was something that we got used to being and doing.
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
Aye.
aye.
Let's try.
Let's get out of here.
Kevin, aye. Tom, are you on CP? I heard it. Thank you. Thank you.
Then do a letter from the finance committee.
Yeah, we were gonna do it anyway.
I love all the capital stuff you gave
But we
me.
should see what the
I'm
letter
the chair
says
of the
first.
capital.
No, we should just write a letter.
So,
Why wait?
I can send, I
that'll
have an
help a
email draft
lot
that I was
looking
gonna send
at
around
forward stuff
anyway.
in terms of what we're
And
doing.
then we just vote.
Copy the letter, yeah.
From Rutland, do you?
So that way it's at least.
You've been coming, okay, I just didn't know who was coming.
There won't be a
So-
Thursday.
Good.
Or
Sign my name, actually.
or if you're okay with it, and to make it, you could have it drafted and then just put it town hall or the annex to sign throughout.
So Tommy put a motion made, and we have to make sure we follow up the rules here.
Well, you should have it on the record.
Yeah, no, I know, it's fine.
Maybe you should have a second doing.
I don't remember.
Any discussion or comments on that?
Tamika, is that something that you can draft for us?
Well, let's let her draft, because they're gonna draft one for,
I can work
select
with you.
board.
She can draft both of them.
Anyway, okay, all those in favor for Tommy's motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? Cool. Okay, thank you, Tommy. The meeting minutes from March 11th is, let's go back to the top there. Can I get a motion for the meeting minutes from March 11th? That's a lot of papers. Any?
I make a motion that we accept the minutes from the March 11th, 2024 meeting.
Thank you.
Second.
Any discussion, conversation, comments?
I believe there might be an issue because when Darren made it was to use ARPA funds, and the 300 from free cash was the second iteration of the budget. It was two separate things, not use both and then 300. It was, the 300 was do another iteration of the budget with just 300.
Okay.
And I don't believe that,
Wait, no, I don't think so, because that, a $500,000 cut to get to 300, I didn't get that sentiment from the committee.
That was.
yes.
I didn't get that, I thought you guys were saying,
Do a budget iteration.
get to a revenue to where you only use 300 in free cash, and I thought the proposal was to fill the balance with ARPA.
That is the hope.
I mean, a $500,000 cut is like, especially at this point, I didn't get that sentiment from, but if I'm wrong.
That was
then-
the sentiment,
That
yes.
was.
Was
All right, well,
And I
that-
think
we
it
have
was.
some work to do.
I think it was to show
yeah.
the townspeople what would happen.
Right.
If it's
Yeah.
not,
Not that
it's
we
it's
wanna
not
do it.
saying that that's what is going to happen. We want to, we don't even want to bring that to,
Right.
You
It's
kind
a,
of just did.
it's an alternative.
yes,
because-
but we need to put it out there so
Right.
that if someone does say, you shouldn't use so much free cash or whatever, we can show this is what it's gonna do.
Is there, maybe we can discuss this more on Thursday, but I'd like to hear proposals for where that should come from.
Well, all right, so that's really what we're looking for you to do, is really.
I mean, I presented a level service budget, but, I mean, if that
Level,
means. we gotta
level
find-
service, I understand level service.
What, I think we should have this discussion. You guys are talking about minutes. That discussion isn't for tonight.
so the minutes do
Okay.
need to be adjusted, because that was the second iteration of the budget, and we can discuss it further on Thursday.
Okay.
So we just need to amend, well,
Amend the minutes.
or why don't we make we're gonna not, we don't have to accept these minutes right now.
You know, she
I can
can,
just make the amendment. You can
Yeah,
just accept
we can
them,
just make the
there's a motion
change.
and a
or
second.
we just wait, we get the change and we just accept them all next Thursday.
Yeah,
That's fine.
that's fine.
Okay, then we need to rescind the motion in a second, please.
Resend the motion in the second, please.
I'll rescind my second.
I'll rescind my motion.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
so we have time at this meeting to discuss. We have an open agenda, right?
Yes. We have any other budget related items, correct?
Thanks.
Doing it right now?
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
We just, all right, we have to make clear for next Thursday night, as a group, what we're doing, because that obviously just sent a ripple through him, that he, and I am not, I do not wanna recommend we're cutting $500,000 from the budget. That's not my job.
No,
They
that
told me
is-
that, that's
no.
not my job.
No,
And it's not gonna become my job because of this.
no.
What we're doing is recommending a $500,000 cut. And if he doesn't like that, then what are we gonna do?
Well, so, you gotta understand, we're in a position here to be able to recommend approval or not recommend approval. That's what our responsibility is. So if they're presenting a budget that we can't recommend, then that's what we do, we take a vote for it, don't recommend it. And then it's gonna put him in a
I
position
mean-
that he's gonna have to go back and look at it.
So the truth of the matter, though, is we all pretty much said, and/or nobody disagreed with the fact that we were for using ARPA funds to cover the deficit. So by saying that we want to cut a budget that is down to using 300,000 in cash, we're basically going against what we're saying that we are willing to approve, or approve. Agree with.
No, I don't think so. I think it's more of, we agree we need to use the ARPA funds and free cash, but if the townspeople don't vote for it
Right.
at the town meeting, we have to know, they have to know what's gonna happen.
Yeah,
Can I ask a question? I'm just confused. Would it be a $300,000 cut rather than a 500? Because
Down to
town
300.
meeting doesn't vote the 500 for ARPA, that's select board. So then wouldn't you have an iteration that showed if they didn't accept 300 in free cash?
No,
So
it would be only using $300,000 in free cash.
we were mostly just
Oh.
looking at like what would a normal budget year look like of using the normal amount of free cash to balance is what we were kind of.
Because right now, with the 850, we're gonna be starting off with a very large deficit to start off with. It's a structural deficit. And we really don't have a plan on how we're going to get that balance for next year.
Exactly.
Are we, I guess, are we asking for an unnecessary thing when we've already basically stated that we are willing to use the 850 from whether it's ARPA or free cash, whatever it is? Is it really?
Well,
I think we need a consensus. I think we should have a consensus vote, go around the room and tell her, and let everybody speak their piece about, do you think we need a second budget, or do you think the 850 is good? Because I don't think going down the road of this that cutting 500 is necessary if we all don't agree with it.
Yeah, I would agree. So, I'll talk first. I think that we're at a place now where I think we have to do the 850, so I don't think at 300,000, and I was one who said we should, so in all honesty, I was one who was for it last time we spoke. I don't think it's really necessary. If it comes to that, then we're gonna have to come up with something if they don't approve it. But I think it puts an unnecessary strain on the town's workers at this point.
So I guess the most difficult thing for me is not being able to rationalize the future, what happens. Because we're talking about spending money that we don't have. Yeah, we got it, I understand that it's there, but it's not revenue. And for me, a balanced budget is a budget that has equal amounts of expense utilized by available revenue. And if you have that, then it's balanced, everything is good. If you don't have it, there are ways to be able to do that. And this is what we're talking about, is a particular methodology to be able to do that, ARPA funds and free cash. I just don't, my personal opinion is, I don't like using one-time money, I just don't like it, my opinion.
Ed?
So I will admit that when I was on Zoom the other night, I think there were a couple of times when I was in and out, but I'm kind of think that one of the questions I asked was what brought up this issue. And one of the things, and I think you mentioned it, was that if someone got up on the floor and said, we should not use more than X amount of free cash, they would then need to provide an alternative revenue service for that, and that was unlikely to happen. Did you say something like that, or am I dreaming this?
If they're proposing a lower amount than what is recommended for a revenue source, they also need to propose an equal amount in a reduction in spending somewhere in the form of an amendment to the article.
Okay, so, and then we're gonna go, I'm assuming we would go to the floor with a budget that most all of the articles are approved by us. I would think we'd want to have that hashed out in advance, but if they're going to take our recommendation, so one of, was something I thought I just heard you say, Karen, was that if we had that idea and someone asked the question, what if we didn't use free cash, didn't have free cash, didn't use ARPA money, we could say that potentially would cause X, Y, and Z cuts. Is that kind of what you were saying? So I guess a question that raises in my mind is, do we have a plan where it's going to be this specific cut, that specific cut, this specific cut? Or do we have a handful of hypothetical cuts that could be made so we could say to the people, these are things that potentially happen if we don't spend this money? I know I didn't really give my full opinion, but.
We have hypotheticals. We did not go through and do a budget of cuts. We have hypotheticals. It would honestly be a similar situation of last year.
So do we think it would be more effective to have a budget with cuts or just have hypotheticals? Is one more effective than the other?
I have a question, why we're just talking about expenses and why not alternative revenue sources, i.e., you guys exercised a revenue source for FY '24. I know that hasn't been discussed this year.
I thought we talked about it last meeting, and you were gonna look into it.
No. I don't want to say the word, but there's a law that was exercised this year, Proposition 2.5, that's another revenue source.
So you're saying we're going for another 2.5 override?
Are you, I mean, I think that's a political decision.
Yeah, he's basically saying, instead of talking about cuts, why are we ignoring the other opportunities?
Well, I mean, that's one of the opportunities, but all right, so I'm gonna speak only for myself. I don't wanna go back out to the library here and tell the town people, hey, guess what? Last year, we were kidding. Last year, we said, 2.5 override is gonna get us to a point where we're gonna be good.
Yeah, but last year you estimated a what % increase for the schools?
It's like four.
And it ended up being 8.
Right. So when I understand all of that, again, it's just like any politician. And I don't want
You wouldn't be
to
the
count
first
myself as a
community to do it,
politician,
though.
but
At
I
Belmont,
don't have to go in this room and talk to the ladies that were here who were saying, you're gonna put me out of my house. We're not doing, all right. I don't wanna do that again.
Yeah, well, that is another option.
So what was those other revenue options you mentioned the other night? Is that
The debt
pending?
exclusion piece.
No, that's not law yet.
It's not law yet?
But just for people's, so there, in the Municipal Empowerment Act, there's a similar proposed revenue source that's very similar to capital outlay exclusion, which is a 1-year exclusion that's usually used for capital. They're proposing being able to use it for operational expenses. So hypothetically, you could, pay the school assessment for a 1-year assessment, and it wouldn't increase permanently the levy like an override does.
So,
But it's not law yet, so it's.
so I have a question. What is your plan for how we're gonna fund the 815 next year?
Well, to be clear, there's not an 850 deficit, it's more next year.
It's 1.2.
Oh, you mean for FY '25?
I'm just saying, for the 850 that we're starting out with, the structural deficit, I know it's going up, but just that 850, how are we gonna fund that 850? Because we start with that structural deficit.
In FY '26.
So we have several options to fund it with one-time revenue sources. We have free cash, we have stabilization, which I know is out of the question. We have ARPA. We can fund some of other expenses through the capital program. And use less of ARPA for the capital program.
But doesn't ARPA go away? When does ARPA go away?
We have to obligate it by the end of this year. We have to spend it by the end of calendar year 2026.
So if I may, I'm not in the meeting, so I don't wanna.
You're a citizen. You
No,
are.
You're sitting right there.
Name and address.
Neil Whitman, 208 East County Road. I have a question. I think, Karen, if I understand correctly, you're saying if we do the 850 in one-time revenue sources for fiscal year 25, then fiscal year 26, where is that coming from? And I think some of that is in the fiscal year 25 budget. Remember, Austin didn't account for any revenue from the Heights property, any revenue from any of the marijuana retail or grow or manufacturing. There's obviously a lot of advocacy going on at the state level to redesign the education piece, so that, but we won't know.
Well, that's the whole thing. If we're gonna have to stand up and say we support it, and we're gonna, and I concur with Pete, I don't wanna have to be going out in front of people and saying, whoops, we screwed up. I wanna say, don't worry, we're gonna use one-time funds this year, but this is how, this is where we're gonna
going
get
to
that
get
money for
replaced.
next year.
Right.
So that we can say, this is where it is, and this is where it is, and this is where it is. And I don't think we have that.
Well, so, the only reason why I bring up 2.5 is because right now, the fiscal plan shows an I'm gonna round up, $850,000 deficit for FY '25, 1.1 million. So, you also should ask the question then, or it wouldn't be unfair for town meeting attendees to also ask all of us the question is, all right, you're using a one-time funding source for FY '25, what is the town's plan for FY '26, '27, '28? Right, so, yes, is it an issue to use one-time funding for FY '25? Yes, but we're already at a fiscal cliff in FY '26, '27, '28, '29, '30. So, we have a revenue problem. We don't have an expense problem. We have a revenue problem. So we need to figure that out.
Yeah, so.
And unfortunately, I don't have the tools as a town administrator to come up with revenue. The voters do.
The truth of the matter is, we're looking at a one-time funding source next year, followed by a 2.5 override in the following year.
In a big one.
It's almost the only way that the town will continue.
Big one.
Yeah.
And this is,
Hold on, yeah. There is a possibility that we will have enough free cash using ARPA in this next fiscal year that we could cover the deficit in free cash for FY '26 potentially. It'll be very close. It'll be like, looking at the numbers, depending on how things go and how things swing, we could make it potentially. But realistically, it's an override in that year, and if it's not in that year, it's definitely the next year.
And so there will be, we'll have some excess revenue for current fiscal year, FY '24. I suspect that there'll be some turn back in some of the departmental budgets as well for FY '24. So there'll be replenishment of free cash in that respect. But it's not probably gonna cover 850 if you use all of it.
And that's the only reason I'm asking, just because it doesn't seem fiscal. So what is our debt policy, the proposed debt policy say we can use for free cash?
Debt?
Our financial policy, excuse me.
I don't have the policies in front of me, but.
I think I do.
Yeah, you're right.
I'll take them out. But I don't think it was that much.
Well,
That's the thing.
so the policy is ideally you use none,
I get it.
right? But we're not in an ideal situation.
I understand that, and we've never have. I understand it.
So what we're saying is, we do nothing. We don't do any of the cuts to the budget. Someone comes up and to the mic and says, I don't want to use that. How do you propose funding for next year? And we're going to say, well, we're looking at another 2.5 override either next year or the year after.
So isn't it more practical that the budget gets presented on the floor and then it goes to a vote and it gets turned down? No, I'm not passing that. Now what do we do?
Well, what part of it gets, at that point there, Pete.
There's an article.
Karen wants 500,000.
No,
We should go to 800,000.
No, I'm saying-
but hear me.
Yeah.
Karen says we should have a Austin prepare a budget that has $500,000 less in it.
Right.
but that's only 2/3 of the 800.
Right.
We should have one that does the whole 800.
So-
There's gonna be so many scenarios on the town meeting floor. I'm not saying waste his time, but we're gonna waste his time if it
I don't wanna do
doesn't,
that.
if this budget doesn't pass.
Right.
On the town meeting floor.
Right.
We gotta stop the meeting, adjourn the meeting, and come back another
So,
day.
so that's going to be the plan. So I think that and I think what we're hearing here is that the budget that we have gets, if we take a vote, and I will say, I'll just tell you my side, if we were to take a vote here to recommend approval and not approval, I'd recommend approval of the budget the way it is with the $800,000 in there. I would. But then let the town decide.
And then at that point there, if they just say no, we're gonna have to have another meeting anyways,
Right,
because
but-
we're not, no way are we cutting $800,000 on the floor.
Right, but if they say yes, then the money is spent through ARPA and free cash, and we're out the door. But if they say no, I mean, they're telling us what we are expecting right now, come back with another budget. So it's either
Do it now
come
or later.
back or do it now. That's all I'm saying.
But what is the now number? Are they gonna say,
It's 800, if they say no,
they're saying the whole
they're saying $800,000 is not, unless there's amendment on the floor to cut it down to 500 or 300 or 150, I don't know.
So how do we, so my point is, how do we charge Austin with getting the 800, the 550, the 300, the 150?
I don't think we can, honestly, I don't think we can until we know. I don't think we can until we bring it to the floor and the floor says,
Right, so
you know,
what's the point?
And are you
100,000.
thinking that we're gonna stop the meeting at that point,
Yeah.
adjourn the meeting, and then we're gonna have to come back?
We're gonna have
Finish
to.
the rest of the meeting. And
Right,
really-
but we're gonna have to come back, right?
Can I ask a question though, because this is where I think I'm confused.
Name and address.
Excuse me, 3 Murphy Main Street. Why would it have to be the full 850? Because it's not the town that decides the use of the ARPA, it's the select board.
We
So
haven't
then-
we haven't
saying the same
technically
thing.
decided how that's gonna be allocated, like, I don't think that's actually been
Yeah,
decided.
but what
so
if
I
it's not
wanna-
available? It's not up to the town
They
meeting.
haven't said they're giving it to us.
They
yet.
did,
Yeah, they
right.
haven't said- they
It's
haven't
up to the
approved
board
that,
of
so-
selectmen to decide. They may wanna
So
use
it
it
may,
for something
it may be
else.
coming from free cash, not ARPA, so I wanna.
We don't even have enough free cash to cover the whole thing.
No.
Yeah, but like, well,
So what we really need is a budget to cover everything between free cash and the actual deficit.
Which is the whole 800 and something
No, no,
thousand.
no, no.
No.
We have 750, I think it's 850, we need a budget to
100.
cuts that much.
so,
It's what we really technically need.
Yes, and if they
But we
allocate-
also have to ask ourselves, is it dereliction of duty to put forward an 800,000 whatever dollar ARPA slash free cash budget? And it's arguably poor financial planning, and someday somebody's gonna say, you guys screwed up, and do we wanna live with that or not?
You didn't screw up, but you had to do it.
Well, no,
Yeah,
because I
it's
don't know
not
it's a screw up.
screwing
I think it's just a matter of, what we're saying is, that budget that includes the 850 provides a service, level service, he said it. This is a level service budget. So you get what you're asking for, town folks, and it's gonna cost you 800,000, 850,000 more. Do you wanna pay for that? And they say, sure thing, or get out of here, come back next month. Well, anyway.
so.
Well, at this point, the budget's gonna go to the floor with recommendations from us. It's either gonna be favorable or unfavorable, unless someone gets up and says, don't forget though, even though we said it was favorable, there's $800 in one-time only funds in there. So think about that when you make your vote. We don't do it that way.
No, we don't. We don't.
And I don't know when anybody's gonna say that.
Somebody's gonna ask.
Well, somebody's going to ask the question. They will ask the question.
But the truth of it, so if we allocate the ARPA funds to, it's, let's say it's $600,000 that we're allocating in ARPA towards next fiscal year's budget, the free cash use would be 150, or 250, whatever the math is.
Okay.
Right, so then we would have enough free cash and we wouldn't have any
Sure.
left over to cover. I want to, and one of the reasons why I'm changing I changed my mind between whenever we last met and now is because of the strain on what happened last year when we talked about all the things we were gonna cut. How many people left town positions that really devastated and hurt the rehiring, the services, that is a very big thing to put on those few people, and that, it just, we've basically consensusly, I know some people probably still have hesitations and some people are against it, but we've mostly consensusly said that we are for using the 850 of free cash, ARPA, whatever it is.
Right.
So why, I get it, the town might turn it down and we'll have to figure that out if it happens, but why put the town workers through that process? Why put town administrator through that process if we're all in agreement that, and again, I know still some degree of disagreement, but why do that to everyone if we're all basically saying that we're fine with the way the budget is?
Good point.
So Ted's talked, Pete's talked, Darren, Lynn, go ahead.
She had her hand up.
She's fine.
Okay.
No, I agree.
Want
I
to
guess,
hang around, Lee? I mean, it's up to you.
I agree. I think it's, we put forth the 2.5, the override went through. That was supposed to give a balance, level service budget. That's what we've presented. We have the cash. Granted, it's in our savings accounts, and that's not good use of funds. We all agree on that. I agree with Alex that psychologically to our employees, we're doing a disservice if we cut them. And I don't know how these people do it on a year-to-year basis. I really don't. The stress level, and we've got good people that we don't want to lose. So yeah, it's kicking the can down the road a little bit. But I think we've got to keep it where it is, but we have to be prepared to say, when someone gets up and says, I don't agree with this, we can say, well, again, what do you propose? But we're going to have to come back with it. And just let them know, we may have to come back to them for an override in another year or two.
Yep.
And make them aware. I think the can's been kicked down the road for so many years. These overrides should have happened years ago, and we're paying the price for it.
And that year that we had to cut $408,000, that was just horrible.
Karen?
And I don't agree in using 850. I think it's dumb, but if we're gonna be transparent with the town and let them know, hey, guys, you get 1 year reprieve and then we're asking you for more money, then that's fine.
Okay. Anything else? Tommy?
Tommy has his.
Well, I don't think we can ask for an override for another year. I mean, I don't know who would vote for it if we asked for another override this year. I'm surprised it passed last year. It was nice that it did, but, I mean, I don't know either of a way. I know that we just heard from the schools.
It's not getting any better.
No, it's not getting, it's gonna get worse next
Right.
year. And what I don't understand is and I understand all the things he said, but they just sit there and they say, well, we underfunded this by $500,000 or $1 million, so we gotta put it in there. Well,
That's why I kept saying, like, how did it get paid for in previous years if it was underfunded?
But they just keep putting it in there. Well,
That's
in
because
order to run this department,
there was a lot of
we'd love to
slush
have
funds in the
several
past.
thousand, 100,000 more to run the DPW with more people in the way it should be run. We just can't say we're putting it in there. But anyways, I was in favor, last time we spoke about using partially ARPA and the 300. I'd rather see the free cash at 150 or less, like we've been kind of sticking to. We get a lot of lectures on don't use free cash for this stuff, but yet we always end up doing it because we end up being forced to. So I'd rather see that less. I'd like to see and again, I don't believe we have any say or whatever. That's up to a different committee to say what they're gonna use it for, but if we could use less of that and let that
Leah, is that
take on other.
Is that on your agenda for Monday night?
Yeah.
The ARPA?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
We could.
So that way we
so-
know.
Do other things with the ARPA funds for the town that need to get done.
So let me
I
make sure I
understand we might be
understand.
stuck in a corner, we can't do anything else, but.
Wait, can you just clarify what you're saying?
done.
No.
No, you're not.
Can you clarify what you mean by use 150 less of free, and what did you mean specifically? I just want to
If
understand.
we're forced to use 300 of free cash, like we said last time,
Yeah.
we may have to do it.
Oh, okay.
I'd rather see us use 150 or less of free cash by making some cuts if we can.
Gotcha.
And I don't know how we can get the school to make some cuts because it just,
Well, I think the whole problem
Frustrates
is
us.
inflation has gone up so much, and the school budget has gone up so much, and everyone's costs have gone up so much, but we can only go up 2.5% every year. We're always falling behind.
correct. And that's, somebody mentioned, and I mentioned that article, the school article, I think was, I don't know if it was in Monday morning's paper or whatever it was. The school systems are on financial cliffs, and they talk about all the things we heard about just a little while ago.
Which is the only thing that gives me hope as to the future of the town financing versus state, and how hopefully in the future, may it be 10 years, 30, 50, whatever it is, that there is some hope, because there's a lot of push right now to get some more state funding into the schools. So hopefully, now that may or may not solve our problem, that they just may say, okay, we got more, but we're still gonna ask for more, so who knows what'll happen. But to me, there's a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, I guess.
Okay, so on that same basis, I don't know, Austin, maybe you know the answer to this, but there used to be a law, or there is a law, that if the state puts unfunded mandates on the communities, that they have to pay for them. Now, I heard a lot tonight in those presentations about, well, this is up by 800,000, or this is up by something because the state gave us this mandate. I don't know if, was that law, do you know offhand, or how can we find out, was that law repealed? I know in my time, there was a number of things that we had mandates from the state and we got reimbursed for them.
Yeah, oftentimes, they'll come up with a mandate and they'll give transitional assistance, i.e. grants for if you need capital to accomplish it, or short-term operating assistance, but at some point they expect the community or
Well, they expect
the
us,
school
but
district.
what I'm saying, there was a law on the books that was, if they passed a mandate, they couldn't give you an unfunded mandate. If they said you had to do this, they had to pay for
Yeah,
it.
it doesn't exist anymore, and the perfect example
Okay.
is stormwater.
I was gonna say stormwater's number one.
Yeah.
Well, but that's a federal thing, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's federal
I'm
and
talking
state.
about- No, I'm talking about the state of Massachusetts laws.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
Just
I
like
know
when they
it was
said
there, I don't
the
know.
lottery money and all the other stuff that they promised.
Special education.
Oh, Darren hasn't talked
Okay.
yet.
So
Let's let Darren talk.
I think
Sorry.
the 3 and the 5 is the number that I recommended the other night. I think unfortunately that's the route we're gonna have to go. I don't feel personally that we should put the employees in Austin through the process of several things that we had to do, several different budgets being lower. And I think that we have to be strong enough to say that if it doesn't happen at the town meeting, if it goes down, we're gonna have to adjourn that part of the meeting or adjourn the budget. We're gonna have to come back, and that's it. And I think that we should, my directive to Austin would be, through the selectmen, is that you have to come up with a way. We did this year, what are we doing next year? Is it an override? How are we gonna get there next year? Because Karen made a good point. How are we gonna get there? It's 1.2 next year. We've gotta figure a way. And Pete mentioned an override, it's coming. I don't think we can do it this year. I'm not standing up for it this year. But I think within 1 or 2 years, very possibly next year, it's coming. And it's probably gonna be a pretty decent, a serious one. So,
From the perspective of what's in the budget, I mean, Austin was talking about revenues. There's been no calculation for the 144 units up here at the Heights.
We've talked about it.
No, it's not, but it's not in the budget.
Yeah. That's why when Karen said 850 for the following year, we kind of said like.
but I think it's Austin's job as the financial manager of the town to come up with his vision of how we're getting through it. Is he gonna say an override, and then we can all come up with a plan? But we can't, first off, we can go to the town meeting with this 3 and 8, or 3 and 5, to get to 8, and then we're gonna have to let people know that if it doesn't pass, or I don't think we say that, but if there's a debate, if it doesn't pass, guys, we're gonna stop here.
Right.
We're gonna regroup, and we're gonna have to try to figure it out, number one.
Right.
And number two is, we're gonna have to tell people that it's coming. I mean, this room knows it, and I think some other people know it, because either they listen to us, or they hear it on the street. There's an override coming.
So,
And this would give us plenty of time to,
Start seeding
yes, yeah.
like,
Instead of waiting till February, next February,
right.
start in the fall and.
it's 1.2 to start. So if we don't have Rutland Heights and a few other places, we're gonna need it right off the start. We're not making it.
So have you given any thought to, you were conservative, and I agree, that's how I start my budgets. You were
That's where I was gonna
conservative
go.
with your revenues.
Right.
Did you, now that you're saying that we have some excess revenues coming in, maybe we can up some of those revenues, and so that maybe it's a little less? I mean, I'm not expecting 850, I'm not expecting that, but maybe.
Yeah, so some I did. So for example, and I did that in FY '25, so this has been a great year for investment income. Through quarter two, we're already at $100,000, we budgeted 40, right? Great. So for FY '25, I put it to 60, just to still be conservative. So I've done that with motor vehicle excise, some other revenues. But for FY '26, '27, I kept them flat from FY
Which is fine,
'25, right?
which is fine.
Now, to the point about the Heights property, one of the things that is still one that I want to keep out of the levy calculation and new growth, just because looking at the development agreement, just to get to phase one, build out of phase one, it's 4.5 years from the first permit, which was, what, late last year, early this year, Tamika? So even that's not guaranteed for FY '25.
I agree.
You know,
I
So
agree.
I don't want to put that in at all and hope for good news
Right,
for that
I-
one,
I'm
right?
in full agreement.
But
So-
for the other revenues, yeah, I've tried to do my best to squeeze as much as possible on the
Those-
local. And the state, you know, especially the way that things are going. I
Well,
might
that's a
as well-
crapshoot,
Yeah.
I get that.
Might as well
But
reduce
that
it.
property revenue up there is one of those old sayings, that you don't count the chickens till they hatch,
Right.
so.
Yeah, exactly, because you never know.
Yeah, but on the other hand, if you don't count them chickens, those hawks are gonna come in and pick off some of the stuff that's in the spending there. They are. You know, we don't wanna go forward and say we gotta take out, police or fire or whatever, but if we don't have the funding for it, if we don't show that that's coming, somebody's gonna go ahead and say, something's gotta go, close the library.
Well, so we know the revenues
that
for those,
several
ultimately, if
times.
it's 100% built out, let's say it was 100% built out in FY '25.
Right.
I think the calculations were around, I'm gonna be low on that, $800,000 added to new growth, added to the base of the levy.
Okay.
But obviously, because it's development, that's gonna take some time and phases to get to that 800.
Right.
So it may be 200 in
Right.
FY '25.
Right.
But, you know, we're also taking into account to some of the other building activities, so I know that there's some other subdivisions that are continuing to be built out. So working with Amy in the assessor's office, she was comfortable with the new growth estimate that we had, which I think was 4 or 450. Can't remember the number.
Well, when the superintendent was talking, and he talked about that hold harmless thing, I was gonna ask him, well, geez, you think we should build some more houses in Rutland to get more kids to go to the school, so we get out of the whole harmless thing and get back to that $3 million more dollars?
Oh, no, wait a
So there
minute.
is-
That could happen in a couple of weeks.
Didn't we just a few years ago put a cap on building?
yeah, and we should. There's no
Well,
reason that,
it's.
the money we bring in from new houses does not even equate to enough.
No, it doesn't.
for-
But you can't control the turnover of the the houses as people are gonna
Right.
sell their
Yeah,
houses. You don't know
absolutely.
how many school-age kids
You
are
don't
coming
know.
in.
You never know.
Only allow people in
You know what I'm
I know,
saying?
I know.
He
I
wanted,
know.
he said we had to have a few more students to get over that, so we'd get our another 3 million again. That's,
All right, so we've all gone around, we've all talked. I'm gonna wait for Karen to get back.
let's adjourn before she comes.
Run away, and just turn off the
I
lights?
got a question.
You have a question?
Remind
Go
me,
ahead.
how does a 2.5 override get in front of the voters?
The ballot.
Yeah.
Ballot, yeah.
How does it get on the ballot?
Selectmen.
Okay.
And
So
they-
even if we threaten them with a 2.5 override, it's not a done deal, because they might not say we need an
The
override.
selectmen have been reasonable with our requests, and we talked to them, and we've had group meetings, and I think that, yes, Ted, they can say no. But at that point there, then they better figure out how they're cutting.
Well, yeah,
place.
they're the
It could
ones in charge of the
also,
budget, so.
sorry, it could also go as a citizen's petition, if the select board is against putting something on a ballot. And the number of required signatures to get a ballot question placed, I think is
10.
5% of registered voters, which is about 400, I think, in Rutland.
What citizen's gonna
You're gonna give
put,
a warrant, Darren, not a ballot.
Oh,
what citizen's gonna go and put a petition on that says, I wanna raise my taxes?
Well, I'm saying like FinCom.
Well, they-
If FinCom, if there was
saying that,
some,
but we
no,
still-
but what I'm saying is,
well, we still pay taxes, enough is enough.
All right, so I want to make a motion. We have a request to the town administrator, although he didn't know it, of cutting to a budget that only used 300,000 in cash. I'd like to make a motion that we rescind that request based on the conversation we just had.
With realization, I'd make a little amendment that with realization, we've gotta have a plan for the town meeting, because if it goes down, if it doesn't go, it's gonna be ugly quick.
So,
How do we say that?
what I wanna ask for clarification,
Need a
what
second
does that
before we can
mean?
discuss?
That mean, you're saying, so instead of 300, you could go to 800,000, or what, all the free cash we got?
So we are approving the budget that he provided.
Oh,
No, no. We are not approving the budget until we hear from the selectmen as to what
How
funds
the
they're gonna
funding,
give.
how it's gonna get funded.
Sorry,
How it's
so
gonna get funded.
we
I'm
are
like, whoa, whoa,
not
whoa.
asking for him to
I
do
guess
another
we
budget.
agree with the
this time.
800 and whatever, we agree that there's an
No, we are
800.
not asking him to submit another budget at this time. That's what I'm at.
But
That's
we,
what my
in
motion was.
principle, we agreed that there's a 800 and however many, how many thousand?
850.
850's deficit.
okay.
Second?
Okay.
Who made the motion?
I made the motion. Ted second.
And repeat it again, please?
That we are not, we are rescinding the request for the town administrator to make another iteration of the budget with what we asked for, which was a budget with only using $300,000 deficit budget. Any
And the
discussion?
other money would have been ARPA or something.
No, so I'm just saying that we currently have an $850K deficit budget.
Okay.
We had asked last week, again, he did not know,
Oh.
he didn't understand it. We asked for a budget with a $300,000 deficit, not taking any revenue for Sun.
Oh, I see what you're
Versus the
saying.
sign.
Okay.
So we have a second, any further discussion, conversation around this? We just talked about it quite a bit, but anything? Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
I don't like it, but
Opposed?
at this moment in time, why, yeah.
Opposed?
And I just need to, interject. I was wrong for 2.5. It can't be placed by a citizen's petition. The only way to get it on the ballot is through the select board.
That's weird.
Alex, I just wanted to remind the committee that you guys invited Tracy Novick to your next meeting, so.
Next Thursday.
Yeah, so just to.
Let's do over with her
That'll
quick.
take up a bit of
Ms.
your
Giddy.
time.
No, I think you're gonna find it pretty
yeah.
interesting what she's got to say. It was, when we
I
went,
loved
it was.
it. I thought it was fantastic.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
Any discussion?
I just wanna stay for longer.
All those in favor?
Ten is.
Is it 5 or 10?